You're very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I'm Shane. That's Daragh.
Hello.
This is episode number 62, and we're going to be doing as we always do, breaking down all the rugby that's happening both last week and this week coming. We're going to start with kind of a review segment. We're going to look back on Bledisloe 2 and just the Bledisloe Cup as a whole for this year, and then we'll move on to talking about South Africa's narrow win over Argentina in just outside the Rugby Championship window, but we'll be looking at that, and then also looking at Wales's very impressive win in Cardiff over England, getting a bit of setting right some wrongs from the week before. And then we'll be moving on as well to then previewing. Obviously, England are playing Ireland this weekend. We'll have a focus on Ireland in our breakdown of that as well, because we haven't really spoken about them yet. And then we'll move on as well to break down the Scotland-France game, looking back on the one that happened just happened at the weekend, as well as looking ahead to the return fixture in Murrayfield this weekend. And then finally we'll wrap up with our Rugby News of the Week segment as well. So if for anyone who's new here, if you like what you see and hear, please click subscribe down below for more content, and ring the bell as well so that you know when we're uploading. But also leave a comment below as well, because we love an active comment thread, and we like to hear other people's opinions, not just our own.
Absolutely we do. I guess we'll kick things off with a look back at Bledisloe 2, Eden Park. It was a game to be seen to be believed. All Blacks 36-0 win over the Wallabies, and it wasn't close.
It's the 10th time in the history of that fixture that the Wallabies have been nilled. Apparently.
Yeah, they haven't been nilled 10 times by anybody else.
No, indeed.
It was very impressive from the All Blacks. It was an angry performance. It was very, very physical. They were very.
I noticed you have the words "demolition job" of spectacular fashion written at the top, and that's pretty much what it was. Yeah, no, you're right. They came out really, really vexed and angry, and just upped the physicality, not just in the tight five, but across the park, man for man, all matchups. They were gunning to try and win them, and you were right in saying there was a little bit of dicing with the law as well, because considering what happened with the red card the week before, it was a dangerous approach, but it was something they probably felt they needed to do.
It's something physically they've gotten very good at fronting up since that Lions tour. We've spoken quite critically about the way that they've changed how they approach games, and they're less clinical in terms of being able to execute attacks when they're there, maybe 5-on-4s or 4-on-3s in the wide channels, and exploiting teams and opening up holes. This team looks less to do that and more likely to kick and to try and dominate up front before they go wide.
Compared to obviously the previous iteration of the All Blacks, they're still pretty damn good when they kick.
Well, indeed, but what they have showed to their credit is their ability to front up physically. Is very, very impressive. I mean, they're right there with the best packs and the most physical teams in the world, and well capable of blowing away teams below that level. And that's sort of what you saw here, really, from minute one. When Australia were on the attack, you are right in saying they were very much on the edge of those laws. They were doing sort of your classic cliche All Black stuff. They were going in at the side, they were killing the ball. They were also just being sort of nasty and mean. I don't mean this as a critique. This is exactly how they wanted to play, and it was exactly what was needed to break down a spirited, talented, but ultimately not that strong Wallaby side. And they were throwing late digs in. That Dane Cole's yellow card was one example of it, but it was kind of going on for the whole match. Rough clean-outs, going in at the side, killing the ball, making sure that the Wallabies had no opportunity to get at their ball, and slowing down their ball relentlessly. I mean, in that early part of the game, when it was 3-0 and you didn't know what way it was going to go, and the Wallabies obviously missed a kick, but the Wallabies had a good amount of possession and territory, and the All Blacks weren't giving them an inch. And some of it was at the edge of the law, but for the most part, it was just very, very physical play. And we saw in the Wallabies, those locks. Granted, there was no Rory Arnold. He's pretty crucial to what they do. Yeah. But Adam Coleman and Isaac Rodda, who had both looked so good the week previously, got fronted up against, got beat up, and ended up sort of just being all over the place. And it was as went them, so went the Wallabies. And they
happens very often. They're very illustrative of the Wallabies' chances a lot of the time when you see them going well. And obviously they did have a bit of freedom considering the red card just on the stroke of half time the week previously.
To Scott Barrett, who was there.
So they looked excellent that week, but we saw against the Springboks in week 1, and we saw it again here, when a team is that bullish against them and going into contact that much, and then they can't get anything off. What ends up happening is you spot them in the loose, making very, very loose plays. Like at one point, George Bridge just ran over from a kick return, just picked out Adam Coleman and bumped him down, sat him down, and then moved on. And it's like That's very good physical play from George Bridge, who had an excellent game.
Did.
But it's also, that's not what you want your locks doing. And when you see that happening, coupled with things like Curtly Beale dropping nearly every high ball in the rain, these are key men for the Wallabies, and it's like it was rather a false confidence coming from one really good performance last week in Perth, with everything going their way. When things start going against them, they can compound. They
can play well and they can look very good, but they weren't given much opportunity to. They were put under relentless pressure. I mean, that sort of told for the opening try when it was nearly there for them, but the All Blacks were constantly in their faces, playing that real pressure D. There was a lot more focus than there was last week. I mean, as much as we think the All Blacks have dipped, and I think we're right in that, from the last World Cup, they're at a significantly higher level than they showed last week in Perth. And they illustrated that today, and it was getting in the Wallaby faces and forcing the Wallabies, nearly making that play to Reece Hodge, and then he just drops it. And the All Blacks are as good as anybody for having backs who can just take those opportunities. That
was excellent from Richie as well. Great pick up and go. And it was
being able to score that play is invaluable. I mean, there's a lot of teams, like I've heard that described online as like a present of a try, and maybe it was an error, but there are a lot of teams who wouldn't score.
A lot of teams who'd maybe make a 40-yard gain and set up camp just outside the 22 and hammer away for a little while, and it may yield a 3-pointer in 10 minutes. You know, like
Richie had his opportunity and scored it, and then it was a lovely example of what they can do when they hit their straps in terms of counter-attacking play with Bowden from fullback, which is exactly what I think we all like about Bowden from fullback, just pulling the strings,
he was wrongly getting the criticism, and what they did was correct, and albeit quite ruthless. They axed the wingers and brought in the two form wingers in Bridge and Reece, and that really did fix things. It freed them up to look much more devastating off counter-attack, off loose play, which was coming because it was in the rain. The Wallabies were obviously struggling with the physicality, and then you have Curtly Beale at fullback having a shocker, and it's all, the wheels are slowly coming off. And I thought, like, the two place kick attempts from Lele Afano, one of them missing left, and then he overcorrects and misses right, and those are their only two shots of points. And it's just like, that was illustrative, and that was only in the first quarter of oh dear, this is not going to be smooth sailing at all. And they did show good endeavour, the Wallabies, but nothing clicked and nothing came off. And the All Blacks were, as you say, angry.
It was you could feel it in the stadium, like there was a nervous energy, like they didn't quite know what it was going to be, but the players were just not going to let it happen. They were as tuned in as they can be, and so much of rugby is just about getting that mental and physical edge. And the All Blacks were there. They were physically very well prepared, and they were mentally quite focused on what they were going to do. And then that's where the ruthlessness came in. Obviously, having wingers who can finish is invaluable. But
even closer to the type 5, I thought Tui Piloto stepped up
was huge. He put his hand up for World Cup selection. He was very, very physical, which is exactly sort of what they've been lacking. And he was no match for the Wallaby Locks, or the Wallaby Locks no match for him. And very much winning every contact. And I thought he was one of the heroes of the day. Likewise, I think Artie and Sam Kane, who had a quiet game the week before, showed that can work. Artie can play 6.
Artie as a 6 I would definitely prefer, because putting him in the 7 jersey means that you just don't have a 7 on the pitch, really. Whereas Kane kind of does a lot of that work anyway, and it would think of himself more like an open side than that. I think there's closer to a balance. Artie is the one who I think is undroppable in their back row currently. He is the playmaker in that back row, and so whatever jersey he's wearing, you need to have him in there, whatever way that affects the back row. But they do need to get that balance right, and it was closer to it this week than the last, pretty much the whole tournament. What we've seen from the back row, the balance was a bit better this week for sure.
And they got some big steals, but they did resource. They kind of showed the blueprint of how to beat Australia. Obviously, the All Blacks are the All Blacks, and when they hit their straps, there's not a lot of teams can replicate it. But in terms of your fundamentals, they very much replicated sort of the Irish way of playing them in Test 2 last year in Melbourne, when Ireland beat Australia. Just aggressively resourcing the offensive breakdown when you have the ball.
Get rid of the poachers. Target the poachers, get rid of them. Double 1 and 2 man clear outs, getting rid of the man.
Eventually pressure will tell the Wallaby defence isn't strong enough to stand up to the biggest and best packs in the world of rugby. And the All Blacks just saw that coming, and they were very clinical and very ruthless, and they went about their business sharply and nicely, and got some lovely tries for it. I thought Severice's try was a gorgeous score.
No, there were a few. It was good to see
Aaron Smith's as well, obviously from that counter-attack.
I thought Aaron Smith had a few absolutely classy touches as well.
It was his best performance of the year.
It was by far. He's pulling out all these lovely techers, lovely box kicks at one point as well, and also yes, Sonny Bill. We highlighted it last week that their centre partnership was a bit kind of frazzled. Sonny Bill had the desired effect of like soaking in defenders, but keeping the ball alive and creating that fractured line that the All Blacks are wanted to attack, especially with two playmakers like Barrett and Mo'unga on the pitch, as well as out-and-out finishers and intelligent ones at that in Reese and Bridge on either wing. Suddenly they look pretty devastating potentially.
The backline is taking shape. They need Sonny Bill. Frankly, they need Sonny Bill. I think Mo'unga and Barrett is going to work. I think it's a very good variation. Having two playmakers is invaluable. Bodie at fullback is the best fullback around. The two wingers have taken their jerseys. They've been given their opportunity and they've taken their jerseys. They're not going to relinquish them. I don't think.
I think so.
And then 13 is the jersey that's up for grabs. I think you need Sonny Bill, and the question is whether Goodhue or Leonard Brown or maybe Crotty, if he comes back, can get that 13 jersey. That's the only one. The backline is fully formed. The TJ Aaron dynamic has its merits. I think they'll mix that up.
They will. It'll depend how much of a defensive role they want their scrummy playing, depending on who the opposition is.
TJ came off the bench in that game and got some massive
2 steals, didn't he? No, he's excellent at that still. Like, they are still two of the best options at 9 going, and they are decent. You don't sacrifice speed with either one really, but they do bring different things, which means they can change things up off the bench no matter who you start. So they're actually really are quite wealthy in that area as far as depth is concerned. But you're right in saying that the 13 jersey is the only one that really hasn't been completely claimed with any authority, whereas the other two, the others in the backline definitely have. And the other thing I was going to say on an Australian point of view is that number 6 Lotto, is it Lotto? Sakalaka Lotto. As good as he looks going forward when the pack's actually cruising in cruise control, which he can do, he's not an enforcer that you want in a 6 jersey, and his is the jersey that will become vacant if Pocock comes back in. His is the one that'll be rotated out, and you'll have to rejig how that back row works.
You think is solid at 8?
I think he is. I know they've opted in the past for Pocock at 8 with Hooper at 7, but I actually think
that was when Fardy was there.
That was when Fardy was there. This is it, and presuming that they're not going to opt to call him in at the last minute, which I think Checker was teasing that there might be an avenue for the likes of Skelton as well, but I don't know, but basically I think that Lotto doesn't offer quite enough when they're going backwards to stem that tide. He popped up a lot in the middle of the field, didn't really.
No, he was at fault defensively for a few of the scores as well. He's not a good enforcer from 6.
No.
One thing that they could do is put Rodda in the back row
potentially
going forward. But generally for the Wallabies, a bit of a harsh lesson. They have showed enough last week, for my view, that they are a danger going into the World Cup. They can catch anybody. When their attacking game clicks, it's relentless. But if you can stick to your guns as one of the top teams in the world with big strong packs, if you can have an assured solid set piece, and when you get the ball, resource the offensive breakdown, hold it until the space is there for you to kick. The Wallaby defence, of all of the top defences, it's not going to have enough to repel you.
No.
Even with simple rugby, and I think Ireland showed that when they were on tour over there last summer as well, and the All Blacks very much.
South Africa showed it at the start of the Rugby Championship.
Yeah, exactly. Well, South Africa have freaks for locks, which helps them. Those locks were just completely
there was no
bundled aside, the Wallaby boys. But it's a harsh lesson for the Wallabies, but they're not as bad as they showed there either. When they click offensively, they can be better. But they are going to have to get used to going backwards up front, and I think if they're going to win a World Cup, they're going to have to be able to strike and score tries under pressure, and little moves. Granted, it was in the rain in Eden Park, but little moves like the lead up to Richie's try, when they just managed to get the ball outside of the press, and then Reece Hodge didn't hold it, and the pass from Kirtley wasn't great. Well, those are the things that have to go right for them.
Kirtley has to play well. This is it. Like, Kirtley didn't play well, and it's the first time really all year that we've seen that for the Wallabies, that he hasn't turned up and given literally everything and been all
he
class.
Was targeted though. He was put under pressure. He's not a defensive fullback really.
No,
that's why they were playing him at 12 for years, because defensively he's not a bomb diffuser. He's not in that Israel Folau mould, and certainly the way that the All Blacks got at them with their kicking game isn't something that could happen if Izzy was there, but he's not.
And it's not an area that the All Blacks have targeted them for quite a few years because exactly that. So it's it was an interesting picture, but it is illustrative of if Kirtley's going wrong, the Wallabies aren't going to click, and then if the forward pack are getting dominated and Kirtley's going wrong, they're not going to get anything off, and they literally that's where the nil came from. But the other side on the All Black front, this was a very, very reassuring performance for them. They exactly at the right time. They're going to gain a lot of confidence from this. And if, like, I still think, your criticism of them is right. There is a trend that they're slightly less devastating than they were 4 years ago for sure, but they are still contenders. Yeah. And if they are to win the World Cup, it'll look a little like that. It'll be All Blacks playing.
We still haven't learned in this game about the biggest obstacle to preventing the All Black attack from getting itself going has been a great blitz defence.
Yeah.
And there are a load of teams out there employing a blitz defence. I think the All Blacks themselves blitz on defence. South Africa do, Wales do, England do, Ireland do. All of the top teams blitz on defence, and that's something that the All Black attack has struggled to deal with, especially when they can't get a physical foothold against those great physical teams.
Yeah.
And that isn't something that was resolved today. But what was resolved was the assured, what it wasn't looking like last week, and what they have assured is that they are amongst the elite, especially up front. They are very much an elite team and very physical and capable of mixing with the best and hammering those beneath that. Yeah. I thought the scrum was a very interesting dynamic. Obviously, they took Owen Franks out of there and put Nepo Laulala in. I feel like Tui Pilatu coming in at tight head lock
added a lot.
Yeah, and I thought that was very important. They like Scotty Seo was beaten up a bit, and that's not something we've seen really all year.
No,
we've seen them struggle a little bit on the tight head side. Ala Latoa has his ups and downs, but we haven't seen Scotty Seo struggle, and he did against Nepo and Patrick as well. I also think Rory Arnold, like the Wallabies scrum has been strong, but Rory Arnold is pretty heavy in that engine room himself.
Yeah, I think his absence fairly key. I think Coleman is a softer entity in that.
Yeah, and him and Rodda together just doesn't balance quite as well as either of them and Arnold. Arnold is pretty important he's an enforcer of a lock.
Yeah,
and he's capable more than any of the other Wallaby tight forwards of mixing it with those top teams, of giving as good as he gets.
Yeah,
and he was missing definitely.
Big hole. That was Arnold noticeable one for the whole game. They couldn't get a foothold at all physically in any of the exchanges. They were coming off second best, and it meant you could see, like, even James O'Connor, who looked imperious last week, just couldn't get a thing off. But it never came near him.
I didn't think
it never came.
Fox Sports Australia was doing their player ratings, and they gave O'Connor like 2 out of 10. I thought it was so harsh.
The game just happened elsewhere. I
thought his few touches were decent.
That's what I was basically going, like, he could have been played into the game, but they couldn't get a hold on anything to get, like, the 13 channel is only going to be resourced if you're getting a little bit off in the tide at all.
Yeah,
and they weren't, especially in the rain in Eden Park.
How many times did a brilliant Brian O'Driscoll play as part of a team that just got blown away because nothing else was going right?
Yeah,
and yet every time you touched it, you saw his class. And I'm not saying O'Connor was that good, but he certainly wasn't the problem.
No,
I don't think the Wallabies need to panic. I don't think they need to change too much. Obviously, if they would bring in Skelton and Fardy, that'd be a massive impact, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Right.
But if in the meantime, they have more or less their blueprint. They need to be able to mix it a little bit more up front. They need that scrum solidified. They need Rory Arnold back probably, but other than that,
probably need Curtly to practice a few bombs between here and there.
Other than that, their blueprint for success is pretty clear. Get outside teams, stick the passes, attack, and they're not going to play in as difficult wet conditions as Eden Park presented them with.
That's
in Japan.
True. That's actually a very, very much a factor in judging that performance, is that they definitely won't face conditions like that over in Japan. It'll be a much drier track. And what they discovered last week is fast flowing attacking Aussie rugby is definitely the way forward for them. It's the least attritional way they can go about attacking these bigger teams, and it's definitely the most akin to what they're all about as well, finding space, spotting the try and being quick about it. So I still think that this is the Wallaby team that Cheika has assembled to go to the World Cup, and is the kind of the best of what he has going for him. But with the All Blacks, I think this performance came at the exact right time.
Yeah,
they've sorted out a fair few of their problems in response to pretty heavy criticism in the media. Things like the ruthlessness of cutting the two wingers, the discovery of Tupilota in the second row as a genuine alternative to Brodie when Brodie's out, because prior to him doing that, we haven't seen.
He's more of a tight head lock though. I actually think he's going to be breathing down Sam Whitelock's throat for his jersey, just because I think when Brodie they kind of need. And in behind him, they do need a line out option. Yeah. Especially if they're having 2 sevens, really. Yeah. Like in Hardy.
Well, what won't do is the fact that them with Brodie versus them without Brodie at the moment, prior to that performance, has been such a drop off.
And Tupilota did fill that hole. You're right.
Physically. Yeah. So that was very encouraging too. I think this was a great performance from the All Blacks in the rain, and they even answered your call for an elite haka. They brought it out. They broke it out.
That was an example. It's I swear to God, the quality of the All Black performance, their decision to do what haka, it factors in.
It does seem to factor in.
Kamite is like a tell when they're doing kamite that they're not quite as focused as they should be.
Yeah,
like they should be alarmed if a World Cup knockout game they're doing kamite. Like if I was an All Black fan, I'd be going, "Oh, why are you doing that one?"
Yeah.
You really should be doing your big game fucking haka,
Pango.
pango.
Yeah.
And they brought it out, and you're right, ruthless from start to finish. And the crowd, when they the crowd in New Zealand, like the media who lay into them, they're still a little bit, like there was a decent atmosphere at the game, but they're still quite soft. Like they let the team do the leading.
Yeah.
And in that first half when it was 3-0, it was murmury and tense.
Yeah.
And then when the All Blacks started to go on top, that's when they started to get loud and ruthless and feel happy.
There's less of a call to action coming from there.
Oh no, it's so results based. It's like a little bit like the French as well. Very much dependent on the result, and if things go wrong, they'll turn a little bit.
The French still have like the marching band and stuff.
No, they have more voice and atmosphere for sure,
like,
but just in terms of their attitude a little bit. The team takes the lead, but the team's attitude was great.
Couldn't fault it this week at all. I think they
if they could bottle that, it could take them to a World Cup final. But
the only caveat I'd attach is that it came after a defeat, and we've seen this team do that before. They did it when they lost to Ireland in Chicago, came back 2 weeks later, had done their homework and righted all the wrongs that had happened and put the performance right. That's a very good kind of illustration of learnings within a team, and all this is a very good thing in general. It won't serve you in a World Cup.
No,
if you blow it once, you don't have a do-over 2 weeks later or a week later. So
unless obviously the opening day in the pool, but and then the other thing that I would note as well is just before we wrap it up is that they're when they make those mistakes and they have those bad performances, the place they go to is that physical place the next week, and we've seen that a few times. They go back to their fundamentals, their tight five, and that's what they did to Ireland in 2016. They kind of caught them cold by taking them on up front and beating them. But it has its weaknesses, and there's a lot of teams with great tight fives and great tight play. Australia just don't happen to be one of them.
No.
So they'll have to. It remains to be seen what elements they can fix. But certainly the back row much improved. Sonny Bill in the centres is a solution. They found two great wingers who aren't going to relinquish their jerseys. There's only so much you can do in 6 days. That's a lot of improvement from where they were.
And it was their best performance of the calendar year so far.
They'll be very happy. They'll be very happy.
Definitely. And Bledisloe champs again.
Bledisloe champs again. Steve Hansen, in all of his time as backroom coach under Graham Henry and as head coach dating back to I think about 2005, has not relinquished the Bledisloe Cup. And he was saying he was very happy with that.
I'd
not
say
on my watch.
That's not reassuring for a Wallaby, but that's very encouraging for a Kiwi. It's impeccable.
They care a lot about it.
They do. And you could see that. You could feel that in the crowd. In both crowds. Actually, Perth was great as well. The atmosphere in both games was wonderful. So congrats to the All Blacks, Bledisloe champs again. Commiserations, Wallabies, but
they'll be back.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess there's not much more to say on that one. We will move on. There was also South Africa 24, Argentina 18, which happened.
Briefly talk about this one.
Where was it? It was in Loftus.
Loftus in Pretoria.
And it was a brave effort from the Pumas. It really was a brave effort from the Pumas. They looked a lot better than the week before. South Africa looked a little bit less less enthused about it. It was their B team. It was their B team. It was also
literally 15 changes.
But also just the intensity level kind of dipped a little compared to where it was in Sarta the week before, or in Salta the week before. But the Britsboks getting it done.
The Britsboks, yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, I think there's a few stories from the day that they'll take from it. Sia Khaleesi coming back and putting in 50 solid minutes at number 6.
Probably the best story. From Razi's perspective, I think that's probably the biggest takeaway of this whole game.
Get him in there because he's a phenomenal athlete and wonderful, wonderful back row forward. And they'll be very happy with him and how he's gone. And then obviously Sibu Nkosi,
grabbing a brace and looking very
sexy
very
tries.
good.
His highlight reel, every try that he's scored is great. He has a great highlight reel in terms of tries racked up since he made his debut in June of last year against England, where he also bagged a try. he's been huge, and he could very much come into the reckoning.
He may become undeniable soon enough if he keeps scoring like that.
Yeah,
and I know
Cheslin is versatile enough that you could move him to the left.
Well, like Toulouse play him at fullback a lot of the time, which leads me to believe he could probably slot in at the left wing and possibly do more than Mapimpi on that one. Well, it's just one of those things.
The last game Mapimpi played against Argentina, he was pretty
he was brilliant too.
Yeah,
but this is it. Like it's tough to say. Like Nkosi, the thing that is standing in his way is the fact that he's purely a right winger, and so too is Cheslin, seemingly in the mind of Rassie anyway. So he's not really competing for Mapimpi's jersey.
It's also just difficult to back a guy who's not necessarily a nailed-on starter in your World Cup squad when he literally covers one position.
Yeah.
That's always something that a coach is going to find very difficult to back. But as you say, undeniable is the word, because his form is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's an absolute weapon on the wing, and he's a hark back to those old school Bok wingers who just take tries when they're there. And those 2 scores that he got, especially that second, just spinning and twisting
very little
away.
Right to score it,
like dexterous and great balance to him, and then great acceleration. He's also very solid holding the ball in one hand. He doesn't drop it.
No, he does not.
So he's an absolute classical finisher's winger, and he can make something from nothing as well. So very, very pleased with his performance, and food for thought from Rassie's perspective.
Similarly, I thought Vincent Koch was excellent at tight head, and he's like going into this week, he's definitely third choice tight heads in the reckoning.
He could come in.
That could change, because he was awesome for Sarries all year, was marauding around the field. He was like very good in the loose. I didn't know he had that in him. Like, he was up solid at set piece, of course, but was putting in a serious shift as far as tackles were concerned. And it was actually, even for that nearly try, that would have been worldy try that the Pumas didn't score but got grabbed at the end, was called back for obstruction on him. He was the guy there to make covering tackle.
To be fair,
and it was
clear
obstruction. It was obstruction. I know.
And like as much as we enjoyed the score, it's not getting scored if not for the obstruction.
Yeah, exactly.
Koch is going to get him. So it's one of those that feels a little sad and unlucky, but it is what it is. It was bad play. Schalk Brits captaining the
very
Boks.
solid shift. I thought he looked a good captain as well, good chat. But
I don't think he played for them for 11 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Hadn't played for them since 2008 and came in. I started for them since 2008 and went in and captained them.
He's been awesome ever since. Like, he's been at Sarri for years, all through the Saracens kind of growth phase.
Yes.
He was one of the fulcrums.
He went from being their very, very best player to being surrounded by other great players and then winning trophies, and that Schalk Brits was a part of a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely glittering club career. Really great to see him get a run out as captain as well. Like, I was delighted for him, to be honest, because I've always been a fan of his. He's like the OJ. Like, he's one of those guys like Dane Coles who pops up and playing the out half role. Yeah. He didn't quite have that kind of a contribution this time, but he was really solid either side of the ball with some good touches and some really good like captain's moments where he was like really having good chat with the team and the ref, and like a legit option for Rassie to think about as well. So it's their depth in the front row, but at hooker and in all the prop departments is scary, to be honest. Actually, the tight five as well, because the locks as well, like they are swimming in talent in the tight five, and it's really going to be tough on whoever misses out.
Some guys obviously who are in interesting positions going into this week. Elstad at number 7. How did he go?
He was okay. I don't know if he did quite enough to influence what is already a very settled back row with more depth again. So it's tough to barnstorm your way in, but he was solid. Like, this is it. It was, you say, like, there were 15 changes and it was definitely a slightly weaker team. But it's still a very bloody good team.
Guys like Haaland, who's on the edge as well, who obviously has some nice touches to his game too. So depth is the word. They have a lot of it. There was one, I would say, I'm not sure about Elton Yankees. I think he's still number 2. Don't think Francois Steyn is going to come in at 10. But Reinach at 9 had a bit of a sloppy game.
Well, this is
and when you could factor in the meteoric rise of Herschel Yankees and Cheslin's little cameo at scrum half as a potential third choice, that could very much open up the opportunity for Rassie to pick 2 scrummies, 2 out halves with Francois Steyn as cover, and then have an extra man. Maybe Haaland will get on the plane if you do that. And I think
it's possible. I think it's more likely. Like, that's the one salient factor that contributed to this being more of a competitive context, I thought, or a contest, I thought, was Reinach and Yankees at 9 and 10.
That intercept right on half time that played them into the game that was a mad pass off the left.
It was just nowhere near the same control or ruthlessness that we saw the week prior. Obviously, when the stakes were higher, they were going for their first rugby championship in 10 years. So, like, obviously,
but the stakes were pretty high for Cobus. Like, the stakes were making
on
or not making basis, the squad.
This is it, and it just that combination. Coupled with the set, like, it was all a bit disjointed, and even the tries they did grab were excellent, but there was still a lot of work to be done by Nkosi to grab them a lot of the time, and it was they weren't as fluid, even though the shape was somewhat similar. Like, they still have your 9, 10 and 15 as the distributors, and it's
likewise Esterhazen and Creel, not a whole lot coming from them.
No, and Creel as well. There was a question put to us, I think, actually by Unbiased Rugby, our friend as well, about can he defend the channel the same way Am can? No. And the answer is no.
Well,
he can make similar reads, and he actually reads the defence quite well, but he's just nowhere near the physical, imposing presence that Am is.
Am has a wonderful turn of pace in that little contact as well. He has a great way of shutting down space instantly, and then he does stick his tackles when he's up there quite physically too. But there's very few 13s in World Rugby who can defend like him. In fact,
none.
There aren't any.
None.
He's the best. So obviously Jesse Creel is going to struggle to get that place back, but his versatility is helping
that he
him.
Can play wing.
It's helping him get on the bench and be able to contribute, which he is doing to their big games.
Definitely,
it's Esterhazen who really wasn't offering much, and I think he's been sent home now as well. So it's the Boks overall unbeaten in 19. Unbeaten in 2019 going into this World Cup, and they're going to feel pretty confident going into that game against Japan on the 6th.
Definitely.
So they're all, I think, going to be travelling over to Japan pretty early in September, getting acclimatised.
They're pretty close to favourites in my mind. Obviously, like it's tough to deny, as you say, unbeaten in 2019. They are going to be rolling into the World Cup full of confidence, and it's the All Blacks that are there to meet them, and
we're looking forward to
that contest. From an Argentinian perspective, it was very unlucky. They were much improved, I thought. They were still not on the level of South Africa, and a lot of it just stems from that set piece.
I feel like Sanchez is getting into form.
A little bit.
I think that's helping. They're playing him into form.
Bit by bit. But
he's their best hope.
Diaz-Benio was at 10 for them.
But it's Sanchez off the bench made that try that wasn't.
He did. Yeah.
And he's very much going to become crucial.
Yes. But I still just don't know. Without a set piece, it's looking hairy, because England
and France,
like France, based on the showing at the weekend, they're not going to be showing a physicality. They're definitely coming with a scrum.
Rabah Slimani is one of the best scrummaging tight heads out there.
This is it, and the French put an emphasis on it, as do the English.
Yeah.
So they're really going to need to find something, because those two contests are going to be
what they're going to need to find are quick fire tries, ways to get outside defences and put away scores. They're not putting away nearly as many scores as they're making, and that's been a theme all year. That's going to be a concern for them. What they do have is a phenomenal, one of the best back row forwards out there in Pablo Montero now. Very physical. He's their most physical player, and he's out there looking a little Sergio Parise, almost making all the plays for that pack.
Popping up everywhere.
And
linking when it's on as well. They still all of them have a good footballing sense. So they don't mind throwing the pass when it's on, which is good. But you're right in saying they're definitely creating try scoring opportunities that you'd think they'd be putting away, but they're not. But then history has told me that come the World Cup, when those stick, that's their recipe for success. But I will caveat it by saying I've never seen an Argentinian set piece, but particularly scrum, look this week coming into a World Cup.
And even at halfback, I don't particularly rate Cabelli.
No, compared to
Pichot and the likes back in 07.
But
even Lendajo.
Like we were saying, who's absent at the moment. I don't know what.
Bertranu was the guy last year, and he's not in, so it's very much all falling on Thomas Cabelli, and his game is quite slow. So it's not looking good for Argentina. I don't actually know the history. As for, I know they found form in 2015 and in 2007, but I actually don't quite know when in those years they found form. If there was a little bit of a run in of form up until that World Cup, I feel like there was.
Yeah, but there was what there definitely wasn't was as porous a scrum as this.
Yeah, so it's the writing seems to be on the wall for Argentina after a good year for the Jags. Listen, they put it up to the Boks, and they have a very winnable games against France and England, so we'll see. But very much going in third favourites to that pool.
Definitely. So I suppose we'll move on then to the big one of the weekend, I thought. Although the Bledisloe, obviously, it was just considering how Bledisloe went when it was blowout. Just in terms of the intensity of this game, even though it was a warm-up game. Wales, England, 13-6, very Six Nations feel to it. Stadium,
it was crazy.
Loud, full.
It was crazy.
Intensity levels just upped so much from the week before.
There were guys going down hurt. There were breaks in play when both teams were going at each other.
Yeah.
Like, they really do hate each other, and I was kind of watching it and laughing at it sillily, like, guys, this is great, it's very entertaining, but it also doesn't matter, and you're going belugas here.
Yeah.
And it was very much just an arm wrestle for physicality, and we couldn't feel too smug about it because Ireland are very much a part of that trifecta. When we play either Wales or England, we're exactly the same.
Yeah, this is it. Like, this is why as warm-up games they make very little sense in terms of just hit-outs, because they're never going to be that. They're going to be more intense than that. And this was an example of that ramping up. But as I was just going to finish that point saying, like, yeah, they're not maybe a stylistic matchup for the teams these teams are going to face in the World Cup, but what it seems the focus is to try and get that intensity level up sharpish from pre-season up to intense going into the World Cup.
And that is something that Wales very much achieved to do here.
Yeah.
Wales were unrecognisable from the side that played last week.
Set piece much better, like as in scrum, line out, everything. Even kickoffs.
Absolutely. They were much sharper all around the pitch. They did themselves great service by just attacking the football and controlling the game.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a little bit of panic in the works about Gareth Anscombe's going down, but Dan Biggar, having faced another tirade of criticism last week, was phenomenal. And
he's no stranger to that, and he does have that grit that he just when you start throwing shade at him, especially in the press, he will almost guaranteed have a man of the match performance that weekend. He
controlled things nicely. His kicking game is great, his aerial game is great. He distributed quite nicely, ran things, was up for the fight from minute one, and worked the Welsh attack quite nicely. There were some quite nice variations to what Wales were doing in attack. They were quite well spread. They did flood the wide channels with men on a few occasions and got outside them. Their hands looked quite sharp. Alan Wynne-Jones was finding himself on the wing at times and was rampaging.
Looking downright Fijian with the ball in one hand and marauding. But
it was good little variation rather than just playing the smashy smash game against England.
That's what I thought they brought more than England. They were good value for that 13-6 win. It was tight contest, but they through Biggar really more so than Ford on the other side. They brought a bit more variation to their attacking game than what England brought, because both sides, it was one of those tight contests where both sides did have half chances and glimpses at snatching the win, but it was Wales who took the game to slightly different places and managed to accrue that.
And it was Wales who stopped what England were trying to bring, which was that power game. I thought the holding up of Billy Vunipola kind of symbolically was that performance and is what Wales do to teams. Alan Wynne-Jones was in that.
Yes, he was. He was seminal in it, but it was just clever, wily kind of play where it's like, invite him in, even let him get a few yards because he's up on his thing, but we're just going to wrap him up and hold him. Because you're not really going to drive him back. That's not the way. You're not going to smash Billy Vunipola backwards. Like, very few, no one really that in the rugby world. What you might be able to do is
go him in and
wrap him. And it's just thinking around what England are bringing, which was a bit too blunt, a bit too direct, and certainly with the absence of Farrell, you kind of saw the step down in terms of game management, in terms of they didn't switch it up quickly enough, and they fell into what Wales were kind of charming them into, like inviting them in, giving them a picture.
And they were gaining some yards in the contact. I mean, they were looking at it statistically, it's quite interesting. Obviously, Wales had more possession and territory. They controlled the game a bit more. Examples of where Biggar was coming from and how vital he was to what they were doing. But England made more tackles than Wales, but missed fewer by quite considerable amounts. Going forward, they made 15 clean breaks according to the stats to Wales's 4. And you would take this as an example of like England's attack being bull rushing, but all of that yielded no tries, yielded very little sustained pressure. Wales's defence, even with some missed tackles and some clean breaks given up against the power game, sucked England in and stopped them. And I would read those stats as more as an example of what each team really was trying to do. Wales with the ball were trying to go over the top of England, were trying to go around England. England were just trying to go through Wales, and their kicking game, which was so present in the Six Nations, was fairly absent for this one, and the kicks that did go up were inaccurate and were easy enough for halfpenny, save one error in the first half from them. It was very much not what we'd come to associate with the new England, but I think it's an example of why Farrell and Slade are so key to them mixing it up a bit. And without those guys, they don't really have anywhere to turn when their power game gets stopped. And you could see that in this game.
Definitely. And Wales are so good for that as well, just like upsetting that by inviting them in to try and play that game, stopping it in very kind of clever, kind of wily ways, and then backing themselves to be the slightly more versatile team, dexterous team, where the context
they were much better in the contact area. I mean, the back row supplemented by Alan Wynne-Jones obviously being so crucial. they were just in and attacking that ball and slowing it up and making it so disruptive every time England had the ball, and it yielded a few steals as well. I thought Navidi off the bench went really well for most parts.
Looked very sharp.
Big gutted for James Davis. I had been calling for his inclusion, and he got included and went off with a HIA. Failed HIA after 20 minutes.
However, Ball had a great game.
Jake Ball had a big game, but James Davis, I'm not sure if he's going to get another go.
No.
So it's just one of those things where a guy
just scarlets,
getting unlucky.
No, that is unlucky, to be fair. Overall, Wales will be delighted really with how it went, because they did seem to avoid too many massive injuries. That was a HIA, obviously, so he will probably get another run out against Ireland in one of the tests. Certainly nothing on the level of Anscombe. Bigger went great, grabbed that jersey.
Yeah, I thought both wingers as well. In particular, probably George North, but Josh Adams as well.
Yeah, improved again on last week. Josh Adams was a bit of a non-entity in Twickenham.
But he was
definitely there and present.
George North, every time he got the ball, he was looking very, very sharp.
Yeah, he does. He does look sharp at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, likewise. I thought the centres were decent. I'm still waiting. Their hands were pretty slick. They were getting the ball wide.
Yeah, they were trying to go wide very quickly. Hadley Park's floating a fair few balls out wide, which is good to see. It was also illustrating my point on he's not really 10 cover, because those passes had a bit too much hang time on them, and they were recovering it.
I think we know that.
Yeah.
I thought Jay Davis, he was good. He was drawing, giving. We're still waiting to see him quite at his peak. He's by no means playing badly, but he's just not quite the offensive force that we know him to be, and that's just when he hits that form where he's so dangerous going forward. He runs very nice angles and can link up then, so he can break lines and then link up. We're just not quite seeing him at that level. Yeah. But generally speaking, they'll be very pleased, and when he does hit that level, it'll just give them another element to work with. The scrum I thought was very interesting, actually. I don't by any means think Wales have rectified anything. I thought in parts they were actually really struggling. I thought early in the game they were struggling, but at times, even when Kyle Sinclair came on, I thought all four Welsh props had scrums that went badly for them. Yeah. But the general scrummaging of the game was coloured an awful lot by Dan Cole's sort of crazy technique. When it was I thought it was very curious, because last week he obviously did have a good game, but to see Dan Cole, who's such an old school lock the scrum down tight head, just being so loose in there and really trying to attack the scrum.
Yeah, it's not normally the tight head.
Exactly. He was really, really trying to get under and over at times Nicky Smith and trying to drag him to the floor. And he got on the wrong side of the ref. He slipped his bind a few times. He was going from the outside to in for a tight head, which was very strange.
Very all over.
It was crazy. Yeah. He was going at it and trying to put him under pressure and get the England scrum going forward. But he just very quickly, after a couple of good scrums, found himself on the wrong side of the ref. Yeah. And I don't know how much there is to be read into that from Wales's perspective, other than Dan Cole was scrummaging a bit mental for a guy like Dan Cole. It's something you might expect when you're like Tyke Furlong maybe. But Dan Cole was just scrummaging like a mad bastard, and it didn't go all that well for him. But true. I did think when Marler and Sinclair came on, Wales' scrum looked like it was struggling a little bit. Definitely.
Wales definitely their front row, their first choice front row is solid enough to lock it down.
They still don't quite know who their first choice scrum. These guys are all getting rotated in and out and in and out. It was Nicky Smith and Thomas Francis, and then Wyn Jones and Dylan Lewis, who are definitely a step down today. But I feel like Rob Evans and Samson Lee are still their best scrummagers.
For locking it down.
And I think you're seeing a bit of that in the weakness of the props and how they had some good scrums and some bad scrums, but for the most part they were struggling.
They were struggling for parity. Yes, they were not dominating at all in any.
Even when they were getting penalties from Dan Cole's wildness.
Yeah, that doesn't add up to domination at all at that time or that area. Yeah, but just sticking with England. Just now that you talk about Dan Cole and his strength performance, I was just going to say Ludlam, obviously a solid player, but they were really lacking a 7.
Yeah, Ludlam is one
crucial to their chances to have that one of those Underhill or Curry on the pitch.
They've picked Ludlam now, and now that they've put him in their 31-man squad, they're trying to figure out exactly where they want him to be. Yeah, my instinct says that he's getting a run out in a pointless game against whatever USA or Tonga, and that's it. Maybe. He's not going to feature in any other 2 big games, barring injury.
Is he behind Billy V as 8? Who's
I think it's got to be Wilson. Mark Wilson.
He's played there before.
Yeah, I think it'll be him. But Ludlam is in there as an option. They'll talk about that. Even Curry, they might mess around with. But absolutely, I think very noticeable, and it colours things from a Welsh perspective as well. Wales were so good around that contact area. England didn't have a 7. And there's certainly Eddie Jones, no matter how much he can pretend, like, gotta have a 7. Gotta have a 7. It's one of the big things that they fixed. And while it was
just the way that they play the game, you'd think automatically you're thinking 7 is one of the things I definitely need. Like, they're trying to play a power based game, they're trying to be disruptive on defence and aggressive on defence. 7 is crucial to that. They want to be roughing up opposition 10s and slowing up opposition ball and making it physical and messy, and to do that an elite 7, of which they have 2, which
also their support play generally around the contact could have been better. They were a little loose, and
Wales did up their game as far as that spoiling game we had mentioned the week before. Like, they are probably the best team in the world as a collective of just like pack and backline. They get their hands into breakdowns and make it slower. They add 2 and 3 seconds to rucks that really should be only a second or 2. They slow that up very effectively, and they did so again. But you're right in saying it's harder to judge because they did have a bit more free reign than they probably.
I also thought like it was first game of the season for Itoje, and as he does, he's got such an engine on him. He got more into it as it went on. But certainly in that opening half when Wales were on top, like he wasn't the Maro we know and love. He wasn't making the impact that you would love to see him make, and that's probably telling because he's obviously just getting up to speed, but at the same time is 0-2 against Alan Wynne-Jones this year, going into a potential quarter-final that could be interesting. That's just a win for King Alan Wynne.
This is it. I'm sticking with England to kind of break down some of these things. What did you think of Farrell coming off the bench for the injured Francis and rekindling that forward Farrell access, however briefly?
I thought it was very strange. I know it could be indicative of something and it couldn't. Like, it was just a warm-up game,
and it was an injury that prompted it.
Manu Tuilagi was on the bench, covering 12, but they didn't give him a run out. Maybe this was a consequence of Manu in the warm-up just saying to Eddie, I'm actually feeling a bit stiff, and then they're we'll throw Farrell out, that's fine. You don't know, you're not privy to these things, but I would hope that they wouldn't be considering to going back to that. Like, even as an option, it doesn't really work that well, because Farrell at 12, like you talked about the 2 distributors, Farrell is a 10's 10. It would be like moving Dan Biggar or Johnny Sexton outside of the 10 channel. These guys like to run the show, and when you're at 12, you're not running the show, you're not calling the plays. There are so many things that you're not doing, and George Ford in that capacity was a little bit lacking, and they need Farrell in there, and they need Farrell's lieutenant to be Slade as another kicking option with the left foot, and that gives England so much more dynamic. It gives them the opportunity to link up out wide, to fizz balls wide, but also to get their kicking game going. And none of that happened, and all of that really does depend on Farrell being
Ford
a 10.
Farrell changes the system so vastly, because then you're sitting deeper. You're playing more of a distributing game. You're soaking more through the 12 channel anyway, as far as on the other side of the ball. It just fundamentally changes the way the backline works compared to that Farrell Slade axis, which is excellent. And then
it leaves Farrell frustrated because he's not calling the plays. Like some guys, some 10s, it's actually like Bowden Barrett. It's actually freeing to get them off the 10 jersey and more just playing rugby in the back channels. They're not running the show, they're just seeing what's in front of them and making plays. But Farrell isn't one of those guys. Farrell likes to be in control. And he needs to be wearing 10 and having a lieutenant as a second distributor, as opposed to being the lieutenant to George Ford's leadership. It's so much weaker.
It definitely was weaker. And I thought in the half-back department, England were a little weaker this week. But then, like it's
Willie Hines went off hurt as well, and Ben Youngs came on.
That'll be a concern, because obviously Eddie Jones was throwing all his eggs in the Hines basket.
Picking his 31-man squad ahead of such physical games
is questionable, obviously, but they're still in England, or still back at base, so there's not too much for scope. Like, there's still scope to rotate people in and out. They're not out to Japan just yet, but that will obviously concern them. But the one thing that I think both teams will take from this is just that the physicality was upped, and they coped, but the fitness held up pretty much for the most part.
It was a great game. It was really enjoyable to watch. I was just grinning ear to ear, sitting down watching it, going, I remember these games are a lot of fun. I was entertained in my own way by the All Blacks earlier in the day, but that one was very much
is it like the intensity was obviously more in this just because both teams were there to play, and both teams were staring each other down and refusing to blink, as it always is.
As it got tight, the atmosphere rocketed up and the tension rocketed up, and everybody seemed to forget that this was a warm-up game, and they were,
like
to the
Six
point
Nations.
of stupidity. I mean, Dan Biggar was going down, and he still played for 70 minutes.
72 minutes or something.
Yeah,
before,
having gone down a couple of times with injury, but it was like a
well, especially
raucous,
considering like we're using
we
this
have to
window to
win.
decide. Like Dan Biggar's going, and he's in the 10 jersey. Who is going with him is now in question because Gareth Anscombe, and this was a chance to maybe throw Evans into a cauldron, but
it was
they
a
value
chance
the win.
to give Dan Biggar an opportunity to win back the 10 shirt, and I think the recurring theme of Welsh 10s not relinquishing the jersey goes on, because Patchell didn't relinquish it. He was brilliant on that tour of Argentina and decent in that Six Nations. Then got injured. Then Gareth Anscombe came in. He didn't relinquish it all through November on the Grand Slam. He gets injured. Biggar comes in, puts in a man of the match performance. Doesn't look like he's going to relinquish it at all. But you're right in saying that now the next 2 games against Ireland, obviously they have a week off at the moment, but the next 2 games you would think are going to be opportunities to see who the backup is, because at the moment nobody really knows. Is it Patchell? Is it there's so much chat about Jared Evans, and I just we'll see. But Patchell for me is, if he can get any kind of form,
done it at test
he's
level.
got experience.
But
I think they should start him against Ireland and see how it goes.
Yeah, you're maybe right, but yeah, a great game this was, and both teams reasonably unscathed.
Both teams will take something out of it. England won't be too wounded by it. They'll have some learnings in terms of what they do with the ball being a bit more useful. But generally speaking, I think both sides happy out, and it served as just great entertainment.
This is it. An unprecedented, intense, almost Six Nations-esque feel to the game, which was what we were expecting and fearing for these contests. But I do see the logic in it now. As I said at the top of this, I think what all these sides are trying to do is get their physicality and intensity up to a level that is genuinely competitive, so they can hit the ground running come the World Cup. And even if that means sacrificing a few bodies along the way, which it definitely almost assuredly will, they're thinking that they won't be caught cold.
On balance, is necessary.
Like looking at South Africa, Japan 4 years ago, that's what they're all trying to avoid, being a bit slow to start. And
South Africa made the semi-final, came with a whisker of beating that best ever team to win a World Cup.
I know.
I mean, all of that in a bit of perspective, but obviously
we don't know until retrospect who's right in prep, but this is the way we're trying to do it.
There's so it's so curious. Obviously, it's understandable from Wales's perspective just to get at that physical level, because they might feel that physical level is what is needed to put away Fiji and Georgia, who are dangerous games, and it feels like they're going to take them seriously. But alternatively, especially in that Fiji game and that Australia game, there is the potential of getting caught cold.
Because they're not defending.
Because they're not used to seeing the pictures that those sides present in terms of attack. It's so wild, and it can be so fluid and smooth and quick that it's just not like anything that the Six Nations sides bring. So there is that factor to things, and maybe a game against Argentina wouldn't hurt them.
Maybe not.
But it remains to be seen. And they will have to get their scrum right before facing Georgia.
Definitely. But I suppose we'll move on then to previewing some of the games this weekend. But yeah, fair play to Wales. Got the win back, and it was a class contest. Great game. So we'll preview England and Ireland in Twickenham, which we haven't really spoken. We buried the lead on this all year, really, since the Six Nations. We haven't really been talking about Ireland. We've been going all kinds of places. We've been following rugby, and Ireland haven't really been the story. But yeah, we're going to Twickenham, playing against England. England definitely a few notches above where Ireland are as far as that intensity that we were talking about. Like England coming out of that contest with Wales. But 2 contests with Wales, they're ready and willing and able to be there for the hits. I expect the defensive line to be quick and in our face. I also expect them to want to get a win at home, and it'll be closer to their full team in Twickenham for this.
Listen, I think England. I think this is potentially to be very dangerous for Ireland. It's Ireland's first hit out, and they've got to be ready, because in terms of how England go about winning these games, it is with an early blitzkrieg. It is by physically being at a level that your opponent is not, and that's what they're going to try and do. They're going to go for that blitzkrieg opening, maybe not with as many subtleties and as many reads as came in that opening game of the season against Dublin in February, but it's going to be looking to physically outmatch Ireland, looking to shock them, obviously first game of the season for a lot of these Irish players presumably, and just looking to blow them away with a game that's raw physicality. And then obviously they're going to be looking for, I would say, Farrell and Slade will come in, and they're going to be looking to execute attacking moves and attacking kicks and finding the space once they're over the gain line with a lot more, with a lot smoother and more fluid attacking play. And they're going to be just looking to get that right, and if it clicks, it's a very, very scary game for an out of form, out of practice Ireland team to manage at all. It could be a case of shipping, as we did earlier in the year, some early scores, and England really getting up a serious atmosphere and a serious attitude in Twickenham. So it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, it is. It's an absolute banana skin of a game. It's
more than that.
It is. It's just a tough ask. The trend has been with these warm-up games that the home side has won all of them thus far. You'd make England heavy favourites in this for that reason, but not just that reason, just for where they are physically comparatively.
It's England's last warm-up game before they're playing Italy on the 6th of September, but it's their last proper game before the World Cup against a top side. So you would expect at home
they're going to treat it with due reverence.
Well, and not even that, but they're just going to get their full team out more or less. I mean, there's one or two tinkerings that they might do, Eddie Jones.
Billy V may need a rest now because that's 2 games on the bounce, 2 physical
Billy
games.
V needs a rest, and they also need to figure out who their backup 8 is. So they might give Wilson a game at number 8 just to see if he can do that, and then they might give Launch. Maybe Eddie Jones wants to take another look at Launchbury.
Elliot Daly's also played both, hasn't he?
Eddie Daly, I'd say they'll keep Elliot Daly though. He hasn't
It's not as attritional a role as what Billy V's given them.
But I would expect. Maybe they'll mix it up at 12. But I would expect Youngs. I would expect Farrell. I would expect Henry Slade. I would expect Johnny May. I would expect a lot of these guys to come back into the team. And exactly. Maybe Jack Noel as well.
Maybe.
They could pick him at fullback either if they want to give Slade a rest. But it's going to be very much the spine of England's full side.
Probably Mako and Sinclair in the tight with. Probably with Jamie George as well. It's going to be one of those things, and like we were saying in last week's podcast, or I think the week before as well, that the precedent with these warm-up games is that for the home fixture tend to roll out more of your A team, and for the away team fixtures experiment a bit more. That will probably ring true for England. For Ireland, it's a bit more curious. I don't know how you approach this game.
It's very tough.
Do you send out something of a hodgepodge team, kind of knowing and expecting them to not be at the physical level and get blitzed a bit? Because that's going to shell. Confidence is pretty tenuous at the moment for Ireland, and the first game of the season was getting absolutely blitzed at home by this England team. Can they afford that to happen again?
The last 2 games they played against teams who are real threats to the tournament, England and Wales, they were very, very far off the level. They were blown away. And if they're playing a full England team with an elite scrum and line out and a very elite defence, very physical, an offence that just physically blows teams away, one of the best distributing backline combinations that are out there, it's a very, very tough proposition, and the way to stop it is to play that blitz defence, is to fight fire with fire in a way of matching them physically, getting your big guys onto the field. So it's a curious balance, and it depends on what kind of questions need to be answered, because you could throw Cian Healy in there, and Cian Healy's a great scrummager, but he's the best loose head out there, but he hasn't played a game yet this year, and then he's going to be facing up against a fired up Kyle Sinclair. Even that could go wrong, so it's tough. But I think you would err on the side of getting some of your big guys out there for sure. I mean, Ian Henderson is a guy, for example, who's physical enough to stand up to it. He's someone you'd very much expect to come in. I think Tadhg Furlong, he by all accounts is fit and raring to go. He's a guy who's going to come in, I would say. Exactly. It's guys who can stand up to England and make plays in that pack. Peter O'Mahony, I would have come in and captain the team. I would make him captain, and I think he's going to be absolutely crucial. The things that he can do, he's disruptive Pete. He's one of the best out there, just disrupting things. He's the best
ball forward
defensive line-out player in the world, probably.
One of,
and he's a magnificent, really an open side in terms of how he plays at the breakdown. He can disrupt and get in, and doing what Wales did to England last week. And he's one Irish player. Like Josh has actually had a negative time against Sam Underhill, and Peter O'Mahony has yet to do that, and he'd be the guy I would deploy to take on Underhill in those tights and maybe try and wrestle some control away from England and what they're trying to do. Definitely. I think the breakdown is the best area to try and do that.
Would you see Sexton rolled out for this week?
Well, I think the rumblings are that we're not going to see Sexton.
Probably
like
not.
we know more or less that he's been sitting out training a little bit. He's being managed again and again and again, and it's the same old Johnny story
everywhere.
I suspect we'll not see him until the second Welsh game.
So this will be a chance for either Carty or Byrne or both to get runs out.
I would expect that they're going to pick Ross Byrne and continue. Like, Joe was quite critical of Carty when he came off the bench against Italy. He didn't enjoy his performance very much. Felt like we completely lost shape and control when Carberry went off. And that's one thing Ross Byrne can do is maintain a shape. I would expect them to give Gary Ringrose another run out, probably with Bundyaki. And I think that they're from there going to be looking to Gary as a playmaker, distributor, and to Ross Byrne as control. I think one of the interesting things that Ireland have been trying to do is exit differently.
But also, we saw that against Italy. They were trying the cross kick option rather than just box kicking. They didn't box kick.
Very rarely, which is different from other teams, very rarely kicking to lose possession. They're a possession-oriented team. They kick to recover possession. And Ross Byrne just loves that game.
If you're doing a crossfield kick exit, Ross Byrne's is probably the best crossfield kick of all the 10s we have. Even Jonas Sexton, his flat kick pass is one of the best in the world.
He can kick a perfect bomb as well. So they're going to be looking to mix all of that up. But it's obviously a very, very difficult proposition in terms of who you pick. I don't know, would you pick Cian Healy? Would you try and match their scrum?
Yeah, maybe. I think that'll be the focus for this week. Is it's not a results focus with these warm-up games. It's unique in that way for Northern Hemisphere teams, and it is unique prep compared to what the Southern Hemisphere teams have with the kind of shortened rugby championship. It's a bit more of a natural kind of, the intensity ramps up over those course of the weeks, and then they're kind of primed and in mid-season mode to go into the World Cup. These ones are a bit trickier to kind of manage that way. It's definitely it's a performance focused one rather than a results one. So the areas that Ireland will want to get right that were somewhat sloppy last week are things like line out, scrum, kick off and exit. They'll be trying to get a bit more of that right.
Defense, though. Defense is going to be massive. Can they disrupt England ball and match them physically, or are they going to be blitzkrieged and blown away by them? And that's where you have to be careful about who you're selecting. I mean, like the likes of, I think, Jordy Murphy, like, he was looking a bit all over the place. He's a guy I would expect to step back because it's going to be a very high level of attacking force that's going to be hitting you. Maybe it's a game for CJ Stander to come back in. And
depends whether you want to go through them or around them. I'd like to see Jack
just mean defensively,
because we haven't seen anything.
I know, but I just mean defensively. CJ is
he tends to
physical.
lead the line when he's there on the around the fringes.
That's my biggest fear about the whole game, is that Ireland just get blown away and can't cope.
Because I think that'll rock them confidence wise.
Because it would be the third time this year.
Against the only
100% of times against World Cup contenders.
They've lost.
And lost comfortably. So they really do need to make this close, and that's what they'll be looking to do.
So he's expecting Stockdale back on the wing.
Stockdale is, we
haven't seen him, but it's just a capacity to grab tries.
Ireland's winger,
that's the one. Larmour obviously started at fullback last week.
I'd expect him to take a step back.
Maybe.
I'm curious to see what they do at fullback, just because a huge part of what England did to Ireland back in February was
isolate Henshaw.
We started winning those collisions and then forced the wingers to come up and just made a fool out of Robbie Henshaw, who was out of position at fullback and really couldn't cover the space at all. But covering the backfield by himself is how Rob Kearney made his name. If they pick him there, it'll be another opportunity for him to do that. If they go another way and pick Larmour or Conway and see if they can fill in, it'll be a heck of a job for them to contain what will likely be a very potent kicking game.
If they're doing Farrell, Slade, and then Elliot Daly as well at fullback, that means you've three really good boots in the back line, and you have Youngs at 9 as an option as well. It just means makes covering that backfield just so tough. Because they can always shift it and do something.
That's what
else.
Rob is there for. That's why Ireland have Rob Kearney. It's because he does that so well. And it gives license to their defensive line to be a blanket. And then with Rob covering the backfield, that's crucial to what they do. But in terms of what they do this week, I'm not sure. It is, as you say, about getting those basics and those fundamentals right and seeing if they can stand up physically to what England bring.
Because England will be bringing that physicality fresh from 2 Wales tests, 2 very gritty, one especially very gritty physical one. So that what I do expect is that England are on a higher level as far as their just match conditioning is concerned, because that Italy Italy hit out a couple of weeks back is just no real preparation.
Yeah, and a lot
for
of those guys who were going to play in this game didn't play in that game
exactly,
as well.
Yeah, so it's going to be the first hit out for a lot of the guys that Ireland are going to be putting there. So it's going to put a lot on what their conditioning has been like. We obviously we hadn't seen, like I was making the point in the wake of the Italy game that I thought of all of our players, and you mentioned it, Jordy Murphy looked just a little off physically compared to where he was in the season.
I thought Rhys Ruddock wasn't right either.
Yeah, maybe not, but he was definitely more physical than Jordy. He was carrying a few times, he was winning some contacts. I thought Jordy looked a little slighter, and it can take a while before that conditioning kind of sinks in, and it's all a process towards the World Cup. So this will be an important hit out for loads of people in this Ireland team. I'm just wondering what, like you're saying, fearing that we get blown away and exposed for not having that physical edge that England are definitely going to look to bring.
This is all of it. Like, obviously, what our critique of Ireland is just getting more of an attacking game going. I think that is going to take a back seat at the moment to just getting to the level of the style of game that Ireland play, just getting to the highest level of executing that, getting our forward pack up for the fight and getting our defence solid and not missing tackles, and that's where the likes of Aki and Ringrose and what they can do defensively in terms of shutting down what England bring is going to be crucial, and the back row as well. In terms of personnel wise, there's a few guys who are at the edge of the squad who could force their way in. Obviously Andrew Conway, he's not going to feel like there's much more he can do, but I'd love to see him get a go. Ross Byrne at 10, if he does get his game, is going to have a huge opportunity. Likewise Carty, whoever they go for, huge opportunity to stake a claim at being the backup 10.
We haven't mentioned 9 either. Is it going to be Murray first hit out, or are we going to see Marmion?
I would suspect we'll see Murray. I wouldn't. There's no excuse for arresting Murray. Really, he needs to get up to speed. He hasn't had too much rugby in 2019 period. And another guy is Will Addison, who we haven't mentioned, we've seen so precious little of at test level and even at club level. But
he seems to be a part of the plan, though.
He's talented. Joe, like Stockdale, it's rare for a primarily attacking footballer to find himself in Joe's good books. So certainly I would love to see him get a go and go well, just because he'd give us a little bit more in terms of what we're doing in attack and distributing and making things happen going forward.
For sure.
Those are the interesting dynamics. In terms of predictions, I would say I don't quite know. It's hard to tell where Ireland are going to be at. I would suspect England will win the game.
I think so.
But I don't know what kind of Ireland we'll see, and whether England are going to completely blow us away, or whether we're going to make it scrappy and cling on and make it respectable, as England did in Cardiff.
That's it, exactly. England's showing in Cardiff would be a very positive one for Schmidt and Ireland.
Where Scotland's in Paris, or Scotland's in wherever it was, Nice.
Yes, we love that, exactly. And there's a distinct possibility of both, which is what has me a little edgy about it. Even though it's only a World Cup game, if we get blitzed by this England team, I don't rate what it does for our confidence. But a few things like set piece and defence, that's what the focus this week is, as well as a few combinations. Obviously answering the 10 question, that the conundrum that's now being put to Joe, given the fact that Carberry's gone down, probably will have to bring another 10. Who's that going to be? So there are still those kinds of questions, but the main thing will just be, are they physically there or not?
I would love to see Sean Cronin get a game as well. Sean Cronin
get a start, you mean?
Get a start. If Sean Cronin is on the bench for anybody other than Rory Best, I'm going to go Balubas, because it's too much.
Do not even start Niall Scannell.
He will. Start Scannell and put Cronin on the bench. He's not treated Cronin right, and it's going to be one of the great missed opportunities, not getting what a guy who has the potential to be as useful and versatile an offensive hooker as any of those guys, like your Dane Coleses and your Schalk Britzes and Malcolm Marxes and Cody Taylors. Like, he's very, very good. He doesn't quite have the passing game that those guys have, but he is an elite ball carrier, a really dangerous and quick guy who Ireland have seemingly just played out of and rocked his confidence and played him out of contention. So I'd love to see him get a go at hooker, to see how that goes. But I would suspect we won't see that. I'm unsure, but listen, we're nervous. This is my thing. I'm nervous about the whole thing, the whole enterprise, the whole World Cup enterprise.
It's tougher to talk about Ireland than any other team because we're so close to it. But I'm looking to see just positive signs, and it's exciting because it's Twickenham and it's England and it's a proper test match. It's going to, even if we do get blitzed in that first 10, I think it will become a very intense test match, even if that is the start to it. So it's definitely a worthwhile hit out, I think, for Ireland. It's one that's necessary after a kind of soft non-contest against Italy, and then a week's break, as well as all the pre-season they've been doing. This is definitely their first litmus test of where they're at. Whereas we kind of have seen from England, we've seen both their starting team against Wales blow them away. We've seen some changes come in, so we've had a lot. They've had a lot of more players get up to the physical speed. Ireland now need to try and do that over these next few weeks, and it starts here.
Yep. I guess we'll move on. We'll talk all things Scotland and France.
By I suppose starting with France-Scotland, because 32-3. What a I didn't expect France to be hitting the ground running, but then French motivation is something that I am really I have no kind of bearing on. I find them very hard to predict, like the Wallabies as well. You never know when they're going to turn up and be absolutely awesome.
Fabien Galtier is taking over. They announced, I believe, over the summer he's going to be taking over the team at the end of the World Cup. For this World Cup cycle, they'll have Fabien Galtier in. He's a very smart coach.
Yes.
And he is already working with them in a consultancy role.
Sort of
and I'm
coach.
curious if that's a de facto coach thing, and they have Jacques Brunel as the lame duck.
Maybe.
As they did in 2011 with Lievremont. And Yashvili as coach.
Player coach.
But it's looking very, very tasty. I mean, the selection outside of Kitoon, who I'd love to see come in at 13, the back line is more or less what you'd want, and it was very, very sharp.
It was great to see their intent was to go flood certain channels in the middle actually against Scotland with a load of players, getting Pinot off his wing and Rack off his wing.
They back their ability to time and execute short little plays in narrow channels really, really well. So they can hold their run. If a guy's going into a contact and looking to get a hand free, they always hit the support runner always hits the perfect line at the perfect pace with great timing. So his run isn't checked, and that's what they look to do. And we saw against Wales at the start of the year that they flooded the wide channels with men and got a bit of purchase out of it, scored a couple of tries. And we saw in this game Scotland, who are so porous in the middle of the field defensively, and they don't resource that area effectively at all. And very often you find like a front rower next to a 12 in that channel, and they're not communicating with one another. So it was very clearly an area to isolate and attack. And France did that. They brought both wingers in regularly. Pinot and Raka, such dangerous men.
Getting most of his touches off 10 as second receiver. Like he was nearly playing a second distributor role.
That was a consequence of, well, first of all, the guy can play centre, but that was a consequence of France isolating that weakness in Scotland's defence.
But also their own strengths.
Yeah,
which is good.
That's the point, is that they backed themselves. They could execute a 2-on-3 or a 3-on-2 in a phone box. They would back themselves to do that. Sucking men in, or guy takes it into the contact, the guy outside them checks his run and then comes onto the ball. Their support play is very sophisticated and very instinctive. It's in their DNA. It comes from old school French rugby.
This is it. And their forwards, their pack, are capable of linking in that capacity as well. Like, whereas in this cycle we've seen very heavy, I think they named the heaviest during this 4 years, they at one stage named the heaviest test pack ever, and they were very fat and slow, whereas they are still an absolute physical monster, that a behemoth of a pack to go up against, both at scrum time and around the park, but they're more mobile and they're actually collectively more capable of linking and creating that space.
There was a beautiful try that was scored by it was scored by Maydard, but it was just an example of it, where they had I think it was Raka had come in off a disguised. No, in fact, it wasn't Raka at all. It was one of the back rows. Francois Craw.
Yes, that's
came in off a delayed ball. It was something Australia have been doing a lot of.
Beautiful ball from Lopez.
Yeah, disguising a blindside runner from the blind side of the 10, from the defence's perspective, out of the game, more or less directly behind the ruck. Lopez straightens and pops it in behind to the blindside guy, often a winger. It's how Australia scored their try against I think it was against Argentina, but I wish I could remember. They got Karabetti off Leia Lafano in a very similar move. Lopez just checked his run, flicked it in behind, and Francois Croc came through the line, through the porous Scotland defence again. But then the support play was what made it great. Dupont came in from the scrum half, straightened his inside, running a perfect supporting angle, got the ball, and Maydard, who had been bridging over the ruck, came right in behind Dupont, running the support line for him, and Dupont just soft hands, knew Maynard was going to be there. Maynard got the ball and was on the run in, and as he was on the run in, Raka was running the support line right next to him on his shoulder, and would have been there if there was a Scottish defender to try and shut it down. And it's that sophisticated support line that we see from Clermont and we see from Toulouse,
and that's
when they break the line, they're going to be a very difficult team to stop when they're playing like that, when they're in sync with one another.
The fact that like Toulouse, the arrival of Toulouse this year has really saved France's World Cup campaign, because now I'm looking at them as saying like they're in with an outside shot for sure, because they're a perfect blend of the two champion teams in France at the moment, which is true, which is Clermont and Toulouse. Clermont won obviously the Challenge Cup this year, got to the final, played out a great final, weren't quite on the level of the resurgent Toulouse, but now you're looking at the halfback combination and it's Antoine Dupont and Camille Lopez, both of them linking,
always
playing
the strongest
well.
pair.
It was, but it took them long enough to realise that. They've gone through many.
These teams, England, France and South Africa, these teams with colossal player pools, half the battle is just getting the right guys on the field, which for so long you were seeing incorrect stuff from France all over the place, and you feel like this is a lot closer. Like I still think Gatun is one of the best 13s in the world, especially offensively. But
you'd want to see that Fofana Gatun potentially as one of the world beating centre partnerships.
Raka and Pinot on the wings, and Maynard, the wily guy at fullback, with the fresh faced Thomas Ramos to come in and potentially be another option there.
And he also plays his club rugby at Toulouse, so he understands what they're trying to do.
It's all very smooth. It looks very good. Up front, they were dominant really for the most part. I thought Camille Shah was just making play after play after play from hooker,
really making an argument that he probably is the more barnstorming effective hooker than Garado, but Garado is their captain, and similar to what Rory Best brings for Ireland. I think he's probably a levelling influence.
The John
on
Smith v Bismarck Duplessis school argument.
Same kind of deal. But you do see some members of that pack have a tendency to get a bit hot-headed and a bit loose, so maybe there's method to the madness there. but obviously Camille Chat, similar to what we were saying about Nkosi, he could become undeniable if he keeps replicating form like that, because he was marauding through Scots everywhere on the pitch, on either side of the ball as well. He put in a few great hits too. He's a real
it's still one of those things where France have obviously been pretty consistently falling short physically against the big three in the Six Nations. Pretty like when was
even this year, Ireland, a stuttering Ireland, managed to just hold the ball against them, and they didn't really. They still don't really have an out and out ball foraging seven. So if teams hold the ball against them, like what Leinster did to Toulouse as well, just hold the ball and go through phase after phase after phase. It really does upset them, because they are a team that like to get their hands on the ball and flood channels and play at pace and get guys like Pinot into the game and that kind of thing. So if they're going 10-minute spells without seeing the ball, it's tough for them.
And Scotland really didn't offer anything like that.
Nothing at all.
It was it was really not what Scotland needed.
Well, I thought tamely kicking 3 points at 15-0 down was symptomatic of rather a losing picture, and then Hastings obviously getting sent off shortly thereafter as well. It was all very limp from a Scots point of view.
Yeah, it was poor. I mean, they were all over the place. I thought guys like Jamie Ritchie, who had a real chance to make a statement at 7 and just go soft all over the place, and McAnally didn't make an impact.
He had a few loose throws as well. It was concerning to see McAnally out of form.
Yeah, as concerning as Ken Owens and Alvin Jones struggle in their opening
This
day.
is it. No, I know.
Home,
it was unprecedented to see the French hit the ground running at such a speed and such a clip as well. Like in Scotland, were not ready for it or anticipating it. But it was still great to see a French side playing with a verve and a swagger and playing some really lovely stuff as well. Some of the tries they grabbed were absolutely beautiful. But from Scotland's point of view, their defence is one of the things that has to improve this week, because obviously they have Ireland in their group, and that's a tough one that they're probably not expecting to win. But Japan are Pacific Nations Cup champions and are lighting it up, not in a dissimilar fashion to that. They are executing 5-on-4s in small amounts of space, catch pass,
running great support lines, looking to get beyond and outside a defensive line, and then finding a try from there. Really not wanting the play to end until there's a try. And that's very similar to what France are trying to bring. And Scotland to look so ragged in defence,
and dealing with that
is definitely a concern.
One of the things we learned from this game is that Sam Johnson is fairly crucial to their chances.
And Hugh Jones, how much patience are they going to have with a 13 who is as offensively interesting but really just does not defend at all or contribute at all the other side of the ball.
No.
And yeah, it's like he does offer things, but I wonder.
Yeah,
I do wonder.
There must be other options. Well, if you have Johnson and Harris, it's a bit more sturdy, but maybe a bit less flair. But obviously Johnson can...
Well, if you got Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg in there, you can surely make things happen with that. That's where Maitland becomes an option, because Maitland does like to mix it in first receiver from time to time. But it's an interesting one. They have made 14 changes
there you go.
This week. Is that just a push of the panic button, or is that something they always plan to do? It's hard to tell.
Well, the precedent, as we were saying in the other ones, is that they're kind of experimenting away from home and going closer to their full steam at home, and that's been the case for England, Ireland and Wales.
100%. And there's you can't factor, even though it was 32-3, you can't exclude, especially with these two teams who both have such wild discrepancies between home and away form generally. And their best performances and their worst performances are diametrically opposed sometimes. So we're going to know a lot more after watching this game. And both sides have named their teams. Obviously Scotland with the 14 changes. France is quite similar, one or two. Guirado's coming back in, Felix Lambie coming in for the obviously suspended what's your man's name, Gabriag. And then it's more or less a similar team thereafter, same backline, with Thomas Ramos coming in for Maynard as well.
I'm curious to see how Lambie goes as well. He was one of the finds of the Six Nations, I thought, from a French perspective, because he's similar to like James Ryan. He's just got an engine on him. I told you, he's a young guy, and he'll still be there in the 80th minute as much as he is in the first.
It's time for lock forwards, isn't it? It's just the lock forwards of the world are so good. Even Scotland quietly do, but they have taken away their two Edinburgh boys in favour of Scott Cummings and Sam Skinner. Willem Nel coming back in at tight head to shore up that scrum.
That makes all the sense in the world.
Hamish Watson and Ryan Wilson and Blade Thompson could force their way in as well. Blade Thompson's very interesting, obviously Kiwi background. It's going to be someone parachuted in to maybe do what Josh Strauss wasn't quite doing for them. Josh Strauss got stood up really badly on that opening Raka try.
He did.
He got flat-footed.
It was a great line, but it was some soft Scottish shoulders in there.
Josh Strauss planted his foot, and Raka just did a little left-footed step, and that was all she wrote. And that was pretty soft. Not as dynamic as you'd expect. Hamish Watson is crucial to Scotland's chances. He's their best forward. He is both
dynamic and robust.
He's their best forward and is great all over, so it'll be curious to see how he goes. And obviously Finn Russell, who's the making the rankings of one of the best of times,
key to their chances, but instrumental in both success and failure for this Scotland team.
It's an interesting backline. Peter Horne obviously has been soft enough. Chris Harris has never lit it up for Scotland. They do have a great back three. But it has all the potential of France attacking those same areas and finding those same holes, but with an added dynamic of having very offensive minded players in the Scotland team who can link up. So you would expect a bit more give and tit for tat and give and get from this game, rather than just one-sided. You would hope and expect that Finn Russell
Scotland, what will concern Scotland of last week is they actually had around 45% of the possession last week. They just did nothing with it. So that's what they're trying to remedy with this, a bit. Like, they're three distributors really, if you count Hogg as well, in that back line, trying to get a bit more off, presumably.
And I think most of it's going to be about Finn, but Finn can make things happen, and that back three can finish if need be, and Hamish Watson can make plays going forward.
True.
So it's not quite their full team, but it's closer to it.
Who's on the bench from 9? Is it George Horne, actually?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Blair Kinghorn covering back three as well, so he's going to get his first run out as well. So it's a lot better looking from Scotland, and they will be concerned if they don't get some plays off against this French team.
Definitely. And Murrayfield, that'll be the time to hit the panic button more than last week's showing if it goes as wrong this time.
Likewise, France could make a statement by going there and doing something.
If they do Scotland back to back, it'll be great for their confidence, and it's something they need.
It's good prep for Argentina as well.
This is of all the warm up games. Like, we were giving credit for based on the Wales-England one last week, just at least for getting the intensity level right before it. But stylistically, it doesn't quite make sense for either of those teams to be playing each other, because the teams they're going to be facing are so different. In this instance, I think this makes quite a lot of sense for both. Scotland are looking to try and prepare for really Japan are the main ones that are their worry, because that banana skin is what knocks them out of the World Cup. And France attacking in quite a similar fervent kind of way. Whereas France as well have Argentina to face in their group, and similarly Scotland Yeah, but offer a similar kind of picture, painted not dissimilar.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot more. We'll know a lot more this time next week after France have gone up against the real Scotland with Finn Russell and Hamish Watson,
and just the Murrayfield factor, which is such a factor for this team, which won't be at play in the World Cup.
Just away from home in general for France is such a.
But Scotland too can't be understated. That stat was revealing and coming out in this Six Nations about just the difference between Gregor Townsend's record at home versus anywhere else. The slip up is real, and the difference in quality and intensity is real. And that performance last week, 32-3, is not bucking a trend. It's just another one confirming that trend, and they'll really be worried about that come the World Cup, because they're facing Japan in their home World Cup. They need to be ready for it.
They have like a 5-day turnaround to Japan's 10-day turnaround going into that game as well. Japan are not fucking about.
No, they are not.
They won the quarter-final.
They do, and it's danger all over from Scotland's point of view. So this week really have to right some wrongs and just put in a showing that is more akin to what we expect from them. Yes, attacking verve, attacking dynamism, and get Finn into the game, but really physically stand up. That's why picking the likes of Nell to secure the scrum and stuff, crucial. Set piece has to start well, and then they build on that.
Phil Nell is one of the most important players to any team by himself in the whole tournament. Like, he holds up the Scottish scrum, he locks it down, and he is about the only player they can back to do it.
He is the only player they can back to do it. That's why he's thrust back in here this week again. And he is vital to their chances in Japan later this year. But congrats again to France, because it's great to see France playing French rugby, and a Clermont Toulouse through line through that team. It's beautiful.
The Wales England showing though, and the Bledisloe back to back, and this is another back to back, and the massive difference between home and away in both of those would just add a pinch of salt to that. But I'm looking forward to seeing what France can show away from home. Everybody's away from home in the World Cup, so what can you show away from home this week? That'll be a real test. But signs are optimistic. Attack, expose that midfield defence, link up well, and the tries will be there for you.
For sure. Alright, well, I suppose we'll move on then to the last segment of the show. Rugby news of the week.
Well, we're just going to talk about the there's World Cup squad updates. So this is the main thing. There's been a good bit of news in the World Cup squad department. We're opening with Italy, who off the back of an 85-15 victory over Russia, which was good for them.
Great for Italian confidence, because they were getting their hands on the ball, even like traffic cone. By the second half, yes, it was against traffic cones. The Russians had a lot of quit in them, which was reassuring from an Irish point of view. I'm not worried about them now.
No, the Russians are one of those sides like Namibia who have been so isolated and working away in the background and getting some curious results against the likes of Uruguay, where they actually managed to get a win, but against Italy, a first tier 1 challenge, and it's against the most meek tier 1 opposition, and they got blown away. But it's something that Italy have no experience of, is racking up 84 points against anyone.
So that's good for Conor O'Shea.
Their attack is definitely much better, and off the back of that game, they have named their 31-man squad. The big news from it is that Ian McKinley, who had been playing backup 10 at the Six Nations, he's the backup guy
backup
in
10/15 sort of, but he's been doing neither really well.
Loose and quite poor, and he's been left out in favour of Carlo Canna, which he's the Zebra 10, and I've been calling for that really for a year. I think it makes all the sense.
You've been calling for moving Tommy to 12 and start Carlo.
I think it's interesting. I like that it's an option now, because Tommy does play more like a 12. Tommy was looking good against Russia. He was looking well. Looking very much himself. But Carlo is a kicking option, which Tommy doesn't give. He kicks from hand, and
it just means that then you're relying on
Tito
to be doing all your kicking.
But that's the big headliner. Everything else, it's actually quite a settled side.
It is.
Everything else is quite straightforward from Conor O'Shea. I don't know that we need to go through the whole side.
One thing I would zero in on just how strong their back row is compared to 4 years ago. You're looking at Maxime Banda, Inegri, Parise, Pelledri, Stain.
All of them good. All of them great.
In fact.
Not like to being harsh. Their form back row from that bunch is Negri, Pelledri, and Stain. It's so good that they moved Zani to lock. Zani was originally a big number 6, but he's moved into to lock Alessandro Zani, who will likely either start or be behind CC and Bud. But
there's also sometimes they've moved Stain in there as well.
They won't do that. Bram Stain is in there to play in the back row, and I think they have every chance with that. I think Mbanda will be lucky to get much game time, but they've given themselves as good a chance as they can of shocking one of the big two, and securing third place, which is the most important thing, by having a really dynamic, really good back row, and coupled with a team that can sort of attack.
Definitely looks more like an attacking outfit than they ever did, certainly 4 years ago. Like even their outside backs, Jaden Hayward's had a great season. Minozzi got a hat-trick at the weekend, and even Padavani came off the bench and grabbed 2.
Bellini on the right wing was good as well for them, so they have options there in that back 3 for sure. The centres, obviously great going forward. I would love to see Benvenuti get in there, just maybe at 12 instead of Marisi.
Or if you do that Cana Tommaso Allen option, then having Benvenuti outside, he's definitely more physical in defence than Campagnaro, which is key.
And then would you move Campagnaro to the wing or Axel?
Maybe maybe move him to the wing. I don't know, but like he was linking up very well against Russia, but obviously it's against Russia, and theirs is a curious place where they're going up against South Africa and New Zealand, where they inevitably will get whooped,
probably,
and then they're going up against Namibia and Canada, who they'll probably inevitably whoop them. They're straight in the middle. The only thing that can go wrong is that they slip up and mess it up against.
They could have had a game against Scotland and they got South Africa. So it's kind of just, there's a luck of the draw aspect to them going in as lame ducks this World Cup. But they actually do have, for all of that, it's kind of O'Shea must be annoyed because they just, it's that draw has kind of fucked them.
It means that there's going to be no charitable improvement, because if it goes all according to plan and according to script, they'll end up third in the group where they belong. And you won't improve in anything. But they have definitely improved this cycle. 100%. When you compare that to what the Italian team that went 4 years ago, it's night and day.
They can attack. And they have much, much better back rows. So they're dynamic in that loose area. They have guys who can kick. I would love to see them experiment with the Cana Allen thing just for the sake of pretty rugby. But good for them. They named their squad. It's exactly as expected. But kind of frustrated by that draw.
And unfortunate for Ian McKinley, but especially as Leinster fans. And
his is a great story.
His is a great story.
He quite at the level.
He hasn't really been playing even to his own. Like he was much better for Bennett and last year rather than this year, so he's just fallen out of form and kind of deserves his place.
The other World Cup squad news: Argentina have also named their 31-man squad. Coming off that,
a few more notable omissions in this one than
this one is Argentinian Rugby Twitter, which is the thing that I found out this week, is going berserk over this. Ledesma is being called every name under the sun. He has omitted Santiago Cordero of possibly their MVP of the last World Cup, along with Juan Imhoff, who I also haven't seen all year. He's gone. Landajo at scrum half never got a look in. Bertranu never got a look in from scrummy. Diaz Benicia, who has been the incumbent backup 10 who started for the Jaguares, gone. Having started
in favour of the two kind of expat 10s who are applying their trade in France, in Sanchez and Erda Pagetta, the cast man,
and yet Facundo Issa, who has been one of the form
that's the rowers. That's actually the one I don't understand the most. Issa's omission, that's a bit crazy.
For like the likes of Juan Miguel Leguizamon and Ortega Decio has had his moments, but Kramer can cover lock. That's why he's in there. I know, but it's a curious one.
Who's Rodrigo Bruni?
Rodrigo Bruni, I'm not familiar with him.
Better than Facundo Issa?
Probably not.
Don't know.
In terms of their general team, they do have some hope. Their props are really where they're weakest. Juan Figallo is their only tight head who can sort of scrummage. It was good to get Herrera out of there just because he's a penalty machine who can't scrummage as opposed to just an ordinary tight head who can't scrummage. So that probably makes the most sense. But props, they're generally quite weak. Hookers, they're actually quite strong. Cravey and Montoya can play very good loose footy, and they're a source of great go forward from the pack.
And even Sakino behind them is not a weakness. Not the weakness that the props are in the context of scrum.
Guido Petty and Lavanini are pretty locked down as starters. I have my concerns about Lavanini.
Lavanini gets a lot of credit in the bank from loads of people, but I see penalties when I think of him. I see needless, sloppy penalties that he concedes, especially when they're under physical pressure.
And then obviously in the back row, Pablo Matera is their playmaker, their best player. At scrummy, Escura and Cabelli, the only two who are going. Love to see Escura get it given a go to start.
You're just not a huge Cabelli fan.
Not even a little bit.
and
ever since he was a Brumby.
Yeah, well, that'll colour you against any scrummy. You're still not giving Nick White his due ever since those Brumbies days.
Yeah,
but yeah, no.
I'm kind of right though about Cabelli, haven't I? Compare them to
compared to what they were bringing. Yeah, like
Pichot in 07 and Landajo in 2015 is like night and day to what Cabelli's bringing at the moment. He's very slow. He's more of a Northern Hemisphere style guy. He box kicks a lot. His distribution game isn't great when he's trying to play quick.
Passes get looser.
Yeah, and whereas Escura was playing that quick game all season for the Jaguares, he should start. He should get in there.
Considering their only hope of getting anywhere this World Cup, now that their set pieces off a cliff compared to where they were, is to get wide and trust their outside backs, who are fire. And I think they have 6 that they're bringing, all of them awesome. It's like you have Malia, Moyano, Delgui, Boffelli, Tukelet.
I'm excited to see like as much as it's sad to see him off in Cordero cast aside, I am excited to see Delgui. He was great last year. I'd love to see him in there. Ideally, I'd love to see like Mojano has completely lost me in recent weeks. It's just completely
he's been bundled into touch one too many times.
I would love to see Delgui and Boffelli and Tukelet as a back three. I think that's as strong as they can.
We haven't quite seen Boffelli and Tukelet combining.
Boffelli can play wing. Boffelli started playing wing when Tukelet was undroppable.
Yeah.
So absolutely, get Boffelli on the left, Delgui on the right, Tukelet at fullback, and that's strong.
Yeah.
And they've been goofing around with Moroni, but I like my classic De La Fuente.
Well, they have Moroni named as a centre.
No, he has been in the centre. That's my thing. I would like my De La Fuente and Orlando combination to go.
Oh, I think they are very settled. I think
they're
one of them.
Moroni. They've been playing Moroni at 13 now for the last few weeks. And I want Orlando and De La Fuente together again.
Because they're awesome, and they do have a great understanding, and there is a lot to be said for settled centre partnerships going into the World Cup, especially for a side that's going in without a settled scrum.
Yeah, they're one of the few sides to have a settled centre partnership. You know, that's an advantage.
It is. Just that level of telepathy that only comes with time. It's. I think that will be the first choice come World Cup time, is what I do believe. And Sanchez will be there, obviously undroppable incumbent 10 with Erda Bajeta as cover behind. It's very, very harsh on Diaz-Benia or Benicia. I think that he is the least. Well, him and himself and Issa are the two very unlucky ones to miss out, because you'd think
it seems crazy that they put so much time in Diaz-Benicia this cycle only to cut him.
Like
that doesn't speak to this being part of Ledesma's plan, and speaks more to sort of reactionarily trying to find things.
Well, Ledesma being such a purist and such a scrummaging force that he was, I can't imagine he's satisfied with what he's seeing, because they really can't live with any top scrum.
It's one of those things where, like, and I think this could be a factor with tier 2 sides struggling as well, is all of these little adjustments that you can make. Like you can't actually get gold from a rock. Like they're just trying to craft guys who are not at the level into guys at the level. But the problem for so many of these teams is going to be that the top sides are getting so much right. Like South Africa don't just have Stephen Kitsoff, Beastem Tawira, Vincent Koch, and whoever, Trevor Nyakanye, or whoever they're going to start at tight head. Like, they don't just have those guys, they have those guys being coached at the highest level. England don't just have Mako Vunipola and Kyle Sinclair, they have those guys scrummaging as well as they've ever scrummaged. Cian Healy and Tyke Furlong, you'd say the same thing. So all of these top sides are not just players at a higher level, but they're actually getting a lot right going into this tournament. So it's so difficult for like the tier 2 sides and the sides who are a little lower down, even like Argentina trying to cope with set piece, to make them. Like it takes an effort to make them competent and functional, but then even that isn't good enough against sides who are so elite.
They're traditionally a tier 1 side with these days a tier 2 scrum, and that's enough to lose to every other tier 1 side when the chips are down, because forwards win games, and
so it's full of danger for them. So they've named their squad. People are angry about it, and we had said earlier in the show that the writing might be on the wall for them, and I think we'll see what France look like.
This is it. I'm not ready to call it yet, because France have been floundersome for the last 4 years too. But it's not looking good for Argentina. Third favourites in my mind going into that pool. And it's up to them to book that trend, and they have done in the past. They have World Cup precedent to go in and shock people, but it feels
like those were better teams.
They were better scrums for one. They were actually scrummaging as a weapon, and then finishing crisply and cleanly outside.
Yeah.
They're missing one or two of those aspects at the moment, namely the scrum. So
in the Springbok camp, another cull has taken place. It's a curious one because there's different reporting on it. What we know is true is that Wilco Lowe, who had been tight head, Skaran Tubeni, a hooker from the Bulls, Dylan Lades, probably
outside
the biggest outside back,
really versatile one, but just not as flash and as finishery.
And Marco van Staden, who's a back rower, have been cut from the squad. And some outlets, Rugby Pass and others, are reporting that these guys are still in the squad, but South Africa Rugby magazine reported that they are to be cut. And just looking at the names, these are just the guys who I'm about to mention. It seems likely that they will be not making the squad, but it's Lizo Koboka, Marvin Ori, the lock from the Lions, Thomas du Toit, who had just played loosehead at the weekend, having been a tight head, but obviously they've Trevor and Ukanye can do that anyway. And Andre Esterhazen, who had been at 12 but has fallen behind Francois Steyn in the reckoning. It looks like those guys are, if they're not headed back to their provinces, as was reported by South Africa Rugby Mag, they are not going to be part of the full final squad. And then there's just a couple of injury updates as well. Marcel Coetzee picked up an injury at the weekend and is gone, having surgery, gone for 12 weeks. And the man's luck, he literally got an injury in the run up to the last World Cup as well, that he's never quite fully got he hasn't got a full season since. And now just on the run up to this World Cup, gone again, pushing for that squad jersey, which he may not have gotten, but it's a kick in the teeth, really.
It's sad, really.
Obviously wish him all the best, but there's no sugarcoating it. It just sucks for him.
It does. And then the other one was Dianti, wasn't it?
Well, this is interesting, is that Razi had said, like, we don't quite know the details of Dianti's injury. Afiwi Dianti, who is obviously, you want the young player of the year to be in the World Cup. You know, if you're the young player of the year, the breakthrough player of the year, you want that guy in the World Cup. And he was last year, and he was a great winger. But what Razi is saying is just that his injury is not progressing as they'd like. He's not going to get used before the World Cup. And then there's every chance that you can't pick a guy who hasn't played all season and bring him as one of your 31, especially when you've depth like South Africa have,
at winger,
taking a risk on a guy who hasn't played all season and putting him on a plane to the World Cup hoping he's right is danger city. So it's looking likely that if Afiwi Dianti, it's just not going to happen for him.
Sad, because it's just another all class, all razzle dazzle finisher who's not going to be at the World Cup. It's a shame.
Terrible.
It's joining the illustrious club now. We've got, well, obviously, I was thinking our two Fijian friends,
Ndolo and Magusa.
But obviously Damien McKenzie as well.
There's
a lot of you could put together a series.
A lot of razzle dazzle. Not making it. Dan Levy, obviously from Ireland, is a 7, but he's not coming either. It's probably not as sad a story as Coetzee is, just because he is young. He was the breakthrough player last year. He's going to have time to get back at it. But I'm sure
if it's not nice, it's not
going to
good
happen for him. He'll be upset. From Australia's perspective, we don't have any news on their squad, but we do have a little news story of Michael Cheika hinting that there's a possibility of a Skelton redraft, and that's certainly the way the media read what he was saying, which was that, like, he's not necessarily going to select all from this squad. He could potentially get Skelton in as a bolter, or even Scott Fardy, we don't know.
I think both should be going, and we've made our thoughts on that clear. I think they should both be there and be their starting locks, but maybe not, we don't know. We'll see.
I'm curious to see it. It's obviously a bit of news from Australia's perspective. I think it would very much strengthen their team if they could get those two in there. But it feels very late in the game to be doing that.
They probably should have been there for all of these games. But
From the All Black perspective, we've a little bit of news. Liam Squire, the way the winds are blowing in the press is that Liam Squire, who had been initially selected in the squad but stepped back for personal reasons, for whatever reason, we don't know, and we don't need to know.
Up to, I don't know. It was something weird. I think he was citing his own physicality. I don't know,
or mentality,
or mentality.
As the case maybe. He had said to Steve Hansen, he's just not in a place where he can play right now. but it's looking likely that Squire is going to come back into the squad.
No, he already has a lot of minutes under his wing in this 4
Yeah,
years.
and it makes the dropping of Shannon Frizzell make a little more sense, so that they are going to have a 6 who's going to come in, a natural
who's
6.
been there and been there for them a few times.
And been good. And been good.
So, no doubt.
Liam Squire will strengthen that All Black team. Steve Hansen has also said that Richie Mo'unga is okay. There's no panic from the doctor. He did go off with that shoulder injury.
He did,
There's no issue for him. And then just news on a few guys have been released to play Mitre 10 Cup rugby this weekend, which does not mean that they're necessarily cut from the World Cup squad.
No,
None of that's decided, but it's not good for them either.
Not necessarily.
To be out of the All Black squad. Brad Weber, Liam Coltman, Josh Ioane, Vaya Fafita, Braden Enor, Atu Molly, Jackson Hamopo, Rico Ioane, Luke Jacobson, all gone. You would expect like Hamopo, Ioane could come back in. Fafita and Enor going into this squad, you would have thought both of those guys were going to get a bit more time.
You would have thought so, yeah. Enor especially is so fast, and especially from 13 he's probably their fastest option, and he just hasn't got a run there. A bit of a shame. I know.
And Brad Weber as well. Their two scrummies are so great, but he did have a great season.
He did. But he's going uphill. Like they have no shortage of scrum halves, and to be honest, even an injury to Aaron Smith doesn't derail them, because you can call up a guy like Weber. So I guess these guys are being released just to get some rugby. But it also it's indicative. Actually, South Africa were doing the same a bit throughout the Rugby Championship with the Curry Cup, and
not too much though. The main guys weren't playing Curry Cup rugby.
No, they weren't.
And these are very much not the main guys themselves. But some of them will be
disappointing for Rico. But given the way their wingers performed, there's no way you can give them that jersey.
They are especially ruthless when it comes to wingers.
They are
less so when it comes to like Kieran Reid and their leadership team and their core. But with wingers, they understand wingers. Wingers are your hottest guy, your quickest guy who's going to finish tries. Who's hot at the moment? Get him in there. Rico, you're not hot. You've been great in the past, but we need a winger who's going to score tries. And I think
it's a very healthy approach. I wish Ireland would adopt it a bit more.
I think it's the right approach. I think they get it. They get it on wingers. South Africa do too. You got to just pick your best wingers, because those are the guys who finish all of the work that everyone else has been doing. They're the guys who can get it over the line and make things happen. So that's the little update on the All Blacks. France having a couple of updates. Dumaru is pulled out injured, and Vakatawa has come in to replace him. Vakatawa hasn't played since the 2018 Six Nations for them.
Yes. He was playing top tours rugby and doing okay.
He's a very good ball. He's going to offer a little bit more in attack than Dumaru did, and he's going to be another interesting Fijian to throw into that mix. Although I suspect he'll be on the back burner from the squad that they've selected. The other big news is that Paul Gabriag, the big second row who played against Scotland, put in a dirty cheap shot with a no arms clean out onto the back of a Scot who was lying down.
It was exactly that, a dirty cheap shot.
And
he's got his due for it. He got banned, and
he's got a 6-week ban, which would expire on October 6th. Which would mean he would miss the first 3 pool games.
That's what I mean.
So it's
looking
bring him? Extremely likely that they don't bring him. So
that's
the way the cookie crumbles.
I like seeing stupidity punished in that kind of way, because it was needless.
You need a few examples, especially with those clean-outs, which they're trying to crap down on now. Just lazy clean-outs of just, I'll throw a shoulder in. Everybody does it, and it's just going to take a few examples like this to stop it and take it out of the game. And that's, unfortunately, Gabriag is the victim here, but he's not example of.
He's not the victim. I'm not taking that as the framing. No, he shouldn't have done it. It was stupid, and he's in all likelihood going to miss his World Cup now, which he was primed to go to, because he's been one of their go-to guys in the lock for the last few years.
So that obviously sucks for France. And then finally England, not too much news. It's just that Willie Hines went off injured, Piers Francis went off injured, Rory McConaughey pulled out pre-game injured. And there's no massive news coming out of that camp, but it's obviously not good. McConaughey in particular just can't seem to get a run out.
He's been
picked the last 2 games and pulled out. So
now that once you name your 31-man squad, you just invite these little headaches once injuries start to befall you.
Willie Hines in particular, he's one of 2 scrummies, so he has to run out this weekend. Otherwise they're going to have to adjust their squad. So it's a curious one. That's the England update. And that was the Leinster squads. We have a few other bits and pieces of news. before we wrap up the show, just Leinster are playing Canada this weekend in Ontario in a World Cup warm-up, which has interest for us, obviously, as Leinster fans. They've named a very strong squad for that game. Some of their front runners, Scott Fardy, who we just mentioned, is going to be travelling. Kieran Frawley, Rory O'Loughlin, Joe Tamani, Connor and Jimmy O'Brien. Some of their real front runners are going to be going to play that game and probably looking to win it, given how poor Canada have been. But that is one of another international World Cup warm-up game that is going on this weekend. Wales have taken as big headlines everywhere the world #1 Rugby World Cup ranking.
Congratulations, Wales, and probably deserved kicking the teeth of the All Blacks. They've been too loose to be going in as #1 in the world.
Wales have a better recent record. It's I like how scattered it is, though. Like, everyone's criticising it because they're like, it's a joke. If Ireland win against England, or if England win, and they could have it, and if the All Blacks win, they could have it, and Wales come in. And I'm like, every time I think of it, I actually think they've gotten that algorithm pretty close to right. I mean, there's a couple of flaws in it, which is just like what Italy suffer from. Italy have to play so many games against tier 1 sides that they can't boost their rankings at all, and they end up like 14th when really they ought to be 10th or 11th. But for the most part, the top teams, it gets it pretty right, and the reason that it's so jumbled at the top is because it's so jumbled at the top.
And also, it doesn't matter a jot because we're going into the World Cup now anyway, so it'll all be decided anyway, so calm down, get thy panties out of a bunch. But it's a good feather in the cap for Wales and for Warren Gatland to take that #1 spot off the All Blacks. Fair play to him. He'll definitely take some kind of pleasure out of it for sure. And hopefully, all going well, Ireland can shock England and Twickenham and nick it off them as well. You're right in saying the salient point to take from that is that the All Blacks aren't as dominant going into this World Cup as they were the last time round. It's more bunched, and there are really 5 but potentially even 7 contenders, or maybe even 8 if you're talking but it just means it's tight and open, and it means that whoever gets
the rankings reveal it.
This is it.
It is as tight as it's been. Just one other little piece of curious news. Sailala Mapusua, excuse me, not an Irish guy, Samoan, I believe. He's representing the Pacific Players Association, and a few other guys from that have come out and said that they're calling on a rule to permit players to switch back to countries of their birth after they've represented another country, because he feels like that it's being taken advantage of. I don't disagree with his problems. I think they are being taken advantage of. I just don't know that this is going to fix it in any kind of real way. I think guys like Raka and, like, you name them, Vakatawa, they're in every team. Your man is at the weekend, Severis. They're everywhere, but I don't even know that that's not the reason they're not going back and playing for Fiji. They're getting financially supported by these nations and exploited for sure. But the guys who end up
Mafi, a good example is Japan. Japan has a good relationship with Tonga, where they bring in Tongan players, give them gainful employment, education, and have them play professional rugby. It's a very corporate kind of structure, but it's beneficial for both.
It's not actually going to solve that problem. And just knowing World Rugby and some of those nations up front, that they would just allow that rule to pass, but then put an amendment where you can just switch automatically, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, Leone Nakarawa, come play for Scotland. Hey, what's your man's name, the number 8, Mata, come and play for Scotland. Hey, and like, Exactly. You would expect that kind of nonsense to happen. So I would not tinker with that rule, but there are obviously
other underlying, and definitely the Pacific Players Association, a very important body, and need to be given their due, and definitely have some grievances that are worth voicing. Certainly the issue of just players being forced to retire through duress.
They have no rights. They sign up when they sign for a French or an English club or a European club in general. They just sign away all rights. They don't have a right to play for their test team. They don't have a right to any amount of rest breaks. They just get exploited to the hilt. They do get paid. They sign a contract that basically is like, we'll pay you this money and you're ours. And that means we control whether you go to the World Cup, who you play for, when you play, how you play. And for the most part, what we're going to do is just send you out every week. because we have no concerns for you. And absolutely, I think that needs to be
addressed.
The focus. The focus needs to be on giving these guys more rights, and that needs to happen at a World Rugby level. They're right about the grievances, but I don't know that that's any kind of solution.
It's true. And just speaking of, in our last little bit of news, the Top Tours is starting up again. Speaking of them, that's starting up again this weekend, which is a mental short turnaround. What are they like? They just get no rest at all.
It's crazy.
That's starting out. We have a few interesting subplots, things like Ronan O'Gara's first game in charge of La Rochelle. It'd be interesting to see that. It's all very early doors.
I mean, I'll catch a game or two when it's on, but I'm not going to actively pay attention to it.
No, not going to focus.
It's like, on a moral level, I just oppose paying attention to the top couture while the World Cup is on.
This is it, and this is to harken on that previous point. It's like, Montpellier, you want to absolutely snub the world of of rugby by having people like Ndolo and Nagusa not at the World Cup.
Yeah,
that is absolutely shameful behaviour on your part. But also, I'm not going to watch them. You think they're going to bring box office to Montpellier? They're not. We'll all be watching the World Cup, and you will still not get the viewing numbers. But you might have done just after the World Cup if you'd let Nagusa go and Ndolo go, have them light it up, be absolutely box office in the pool stages, get them back, and then suddenly you have a few more eyeballs. So I have no sympathy for it. I think it's dumb. But basically they are taking a back seat to the World Cup, as is right and proper, despite vague aspirations of making the top tours like the Premier League. It's never going to happen. Not going to happen at all. International rugby is still where it's at. So let's be having the World Cup. But speaking on domestic rugby, more pure domestic rugby that does have a tradition, absolutely that has been going on. We've been covering doing our Curry Cup coverage at the tail end of this, and similarly, it's kind of distilling up now. We still have the Griquas atop.
All your talk, and the Sharks went to Ellis Park and beat the Lions. Yup, the Sharks.
Yeah, they have been creeping up the table. They were looking very ignominious a few weeks back down low, but they're at 14 points, sitting at 4th, bang in the middle.
Cheetahs got another win away from home against the Pumas, who are more and more becoming the fodder for being beaten.
Yeah, but
and then obviously the great game, top of the table clash. The Griquas got it done against the Stormers, or Western Province, I should say.
Yes. Which is fair play, and the Griquas look really good value for it. Obviously the Lions are still thereabouts. It's 19 points for the Griquas at the moment. The Cheetahs and the Lions are both on 17. Then it's the Sharks on 14. Then we have the Western Province on 13. And then bringing up the rear, we have the Blue Bulls and the Pumas both on 9, which is pretty poor showing from the Bulls, I have to say, overall.
It is. You're not wrong. This competition could change with a few more box squad members coming into teams.
Sure. Which will happen now over the coming weeks as the squad is still
could negatively impact on the Griquas and their chances.
Might do.
This weekend, the Griquas playing the Lions, the Free State Cheetahs playing Western Province, and the Blue Bulls playing Natal Sharks.
Yeah, which should be a good game. Tough one.
And
then the other one that I suppose we buried the lead on last week, but the Mitre 10 Cup as well. We were mentioning earlier in the show, obviously, or earlier in this segment, that a few players have been released to play in it, but it's obviously going on. We have the Premiership level of it, and Tasman Mako are leading that on 9 points after two games played for most of these teams. A few of them only played one, but 9 points for Tasman. Auckland behind on 8. Counties Manukau.
They have 7. A couple of Irish guys, or at least one Irish guy in that team, I believe.
Right, they're on 7, so it's 9-8-7, very bunched. North Harbour then on 4 points with a solo win. Wellington on 3, and then Canterbury and Waikato on 0 each, but those two have only played one game.
And thus far, Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay and Otago up top with an opening day bonus point win. Oh no, Otago have played 2. Forget about Otago. Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty up top of the second championship
with bonus point wins, and that sounds about right.
And Hawke's Bay are actually playing Otago tomorrow on Thursday.
There you go.
And the other games this weekend: Wellington against Canterbury, Tasman against Manawatu, Auckland against Bay of Plenty, Counties Manukau against Waikato. Japers, they're playing a load of games.
They are. It's just what we're saying. We're going to have to keep abreast of it in our other news, our news of the week segment.
We'll do our best to watch maybe a game a weekend, but gee whiz, Southland against North Harbour and Taranaki against Northland, the other 2 games. But that's going on. I haven't watched any of it so far, but I've seen 1 or 2 little clips of tries. It is one of the funner tournaments to watch.
Definitely, it's pure New Zealand rugby.
Attacking stuff.
Attack. So definitely worth a watch. But
100%. That is just about all of the rugby going on in the world right now.
Just about.
In terms of test matches, there's not too much going on this weekend, but that is all going to be made up for next weekend when we have, I don't know how many games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 World Cup warm-up games. The Southern Kings are playing on Tuesday against Georgia in Tbilisi, getting on a plane, going to Namibia, playing Namibia over there. They're the real heroes of these warm-ups. They're being proper
play
to. I love the Southern Kings for doing that.
But yeah, I suppose with that we'll leave it there, because that's a big old show and another one in the books. But
2 hours, and looking forward to next week when we will have the return of Georgia as our headline,
and we'll absolutely we'll absolutely be getting into that.
2 games for Georgia next week against the Kings and Scotland. Looking forward to it. But in the meantime, come on Ireland this weekend.
This is it. We're back with our green goggles on.
If you've made it this far, please subscribe, give us a like, give us, most importantly, a comment, ring the bell, and that, I think, is just about us.
We'll see you next week. Bye,
see you guys. Bye.
Right, you're up.
Yep.
You're up.
Oh no, it was hideous. I never felt right.
No, left
and wide.
Bad stuff. We're still in frame. Oh well. Right. Shameful.